You're too old-fashioned, Richard, Marcus said, leaning back in his ergonomic chair in our firm's glass-walled conference room. The industry is changing. We need fresh perspectives. I looked around at my other 3 partners, people I'd helped build this firm with for the past 20 years. They avoided my gaze, suddenly very interested in their laptops or the spectacular view from our 40th floor office. Fresh perspectives, I repeated slowly. You mean forcing me into early retirement at 58? I'm Richard Chen, senior partner, or at least I was until this moment, at Chen Williams Associates, one of Boston's most prestigious management consulting firms. For 2 decades, I'd built our client portfolio through old-fashioned values, personal relationships, unwavering integrity, and meticulous attention to detail. The board has already approved the restructuring. Sarah Williams, my oldest friend and co-founder, said quietly, your retirement package is quite generous. I studied her face, remembering how we'd started this firm in my garage, with nothing but a shared vision and 2 laptops. Now she couldn't even meet my eyes. And my clients? I asked, though I already knew their answer. They'll be distributed among the remaining partners, Marcus replied smugly. Don't worry, we'll take good care of them. Marcus Thompson, the youngest partner, had joined the firm 5 years ago, bringing his aggressive growth strategies and modern business approaches. He'd been pushing for digital transformation, automated client management, and what he called streamlined relationship protocols. What he didn't know, what none of them remembered, was that our client contracts had a very specific structure, one I'd insisted on from the beginning. I'll need time to review the retirement package, I said, gathering my papers calmly. Take all day, Marcus said generously, but we'll need your answer by tomorrow. The announcement goes out at noon. As I walked back to my office, I passed rows of young consultants in their sleek modern workspaces. Many of them nodded respectfully. They'd learned early that my old-fashioned methods got results that their fancy algorithms couldn't match. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa, our head of legal operations. Just heard. Need to talk ASAP. I smiled slightly. Lisa had been with us for 15 years, and she was one of the few who understood exactly how our client contracts were structured. In my office, I closed the door and opened my safe. Inside was a thick folder labeled Client Agreements, Original Versions. 20 years of carefully crafted contracts, each one personally negotiated, each one containing a clause that my partners had apparently forgotten. Lisa arrived minutes later, closing the door behind her. They don't remember, do they? She asked without preamble. About the personal service clause? I replied, apparently not. She shook her head in disbelief. Every major client contract we have, literally billions in annual revenue, is bound to you personally, not the firm. You. I nodded, remembering all the times Marcus had mocked my insistence on personal relationships, on meeting every client face to face, on maintaining direct contact instead of relying on account managers. How long before they realize? Lisa asked. Let's see, I said, checking my watch. They'll announce my retirement at noon tomorrow. The clients will be notified immediately after. I'd say, about 3 hours before the first calls start coming in. My phone buzzed again, this time from James Morrison, CEO of our largest client, Morrison Manufacturing. Richard, heard rumors about changes at CWA. Can we discuss? I showed Lisa the message. Make that 2 hours. What are you going to do? She asked. I opened my laptop and began typing. Exactly what I've always done. Take care of my clients. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, dressed in my usual impeccable suit. The retirement package sat unopened on my desk. I hadn't bothered to review it. Instead, I'd spent the evening making calls to key clients, not telling them anything specific, just checking in as I'd always done. At 11:45 a.m., Marcus strutted into my office. All set for the announcement? He asked cheerfully. Don't worry, we've prepared a nice speech about your years of service. Actually, I replied, I have an announcement of my own to make. I've emailed the board requesting an emergency meeting at 2 p.m. Marcus frowned. That won't be necessary. Everything's been decided. Nevertheless, I said calmly, I think they'll want to hear what I have to say. At noon exactly, the firm-wide email went out. Chen Williams Associates announces the retirement of founding partner Richard Chen, effective immediately. Please join us in celebrating his 20 years of service. I sat in my office, watching the digital clock on my wall, counting down. 3, 2, 1. My phone exploded with notifications, not from other partners or employees, but from clients, major clients. James Morrison was first. Just got the email. My contract is with you, not CWA. Call me immediately. Then Alexandra Peters, CEO of Peters Global. Richard, our entire Asian expansion strategy is under your personal oversight. What's going on? And Robert Chen, no relation, from Chen Technologies. Our agreement specifically requires your direct involvement. This retirement announcement violates multiple clauses. At 12:30 p.m., Lisa appeared in my doorway, trying to hide a smile. Legal department is getting flooded with client inquiries, she reported. Apparently, they're all reviewing their contracts and finding some interesting clauses. I nodded, continuing to work on my laptop. How's Marcus taking it? He's locked in his office with the contract review team. Sarah looks like she's seen a ghost. At 1 p.m., Sarah finally came to see me. She looked shaken. Richard, she began, we seem to have a situation with the client contracts. Do we? I replied mildly, not looking up from my work. The personal service clause. It's in every major contract. They can all terminate immediately if you're not directly involved. Interesting oversight in your restructuring plan. She sank into a chair. Richard, this could destroy the firm. We're talking about billions in annual revenue. As I've always said, I remarked, personal relationships matter. What do you want? She asked quietly. I finally looked up. Want? I don't want anything. Sarah, I'm too old-fashioned, remember? Not suited for the modern business world. Please, she said, we can revise the retirement package, adjust the terms. The board meeting is at 2 p.m., I replied. I'll present my position then. The next hour was chaos. Partners rushed between offices, legal teams pored over contracts, and clients continued calling. I responded to each client personally, just as I always had, telling them I'd update them after the board meeting. At 2 p.m. sharp, I walked into the boardroom. Every seat was filled. Partners, board members, legal advisors. Marcus sat slumped in his chair, his earlier smugness replaced by barely concealed panic. Thank you all for coming, I began, setting my laptop on the table. I understand there's some concern about our client contracts. Concern? Marcus burst out. Every major client we have is threatening to walk. This is a disaster. Perhaps, I suggested, we should have discussed the implications of forcing out the partner who holds those relationships before making announcements. The board chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Chen, what exactly are you proposing? I opened my laptop and projected a document onto the screen. I'm proposing a new structure for Chen, Williams Associates, one that returns to our founding principles of personal service and direct client relationships. Meaning what? Sarah asked. Meaning I'll maintain my role as managing partner for client relationships. Marcus and his team can handle their digital transformation projects, but not at the expense of our core values. And if we refuse? Marcus challenged. I smiled slightly. Then I'll open my own firm, and since every major client is bound to me personally, not CWA, they'll be free to follow. I already have written commitments from our top 10 clients to do exactly that. The room erupted in chaos. Board members demanded explanations. Partners argued amongst themselves. Legal advisors huddled over documents. The chairman banged his gavel. Enough, Mr. Chen. You've made your point. What exactly do you want? 3 things, I said calmly. First, I maintain my current position and client relationships, with full autonomy over how those relationships are managed. Heads nodded around the table. Second, we create a dual track for client management, traditional personal service for those who want it, and Marcus's modern approach for those who prefer it, but no forced transitions. Marcus started to protest, but Sarah kicked him under the table. And third, I continued, we establish a mentoring program. I'll train the next generation in relationship building, showing them why personal connections matter more than algorithms. The chairman looked around the room. All in favor? The vote was unanimous. even Marcus reluctantly raising his hand. One more thing, I added. Lisa takes over as head of our legal department. With a partnership track, she's the only one who bothered to read the contracts carefully. After the meeting, I returned to my office to find it already swamped with flowers and gifts from clients who'd heard I was staying. James Morrison had sent a 50-year-old bottle of scotch with a note. Never doubted you for a minute. Here's to old-fashioned values. Sarah appeared in my doorway, looking sheepish. I'm sorry, Richard. We got caught up in Marcus's vision of modernization and forgot what really matters. The relationship business is about relationships, I replied, something the algorithms haven't figured out yet. Over the next few months, Chen Williams Associates underwent a transformation, but not the one Marcus had envisioned. We maintained our traditional client service model alongside the new digital initiatives, letting clients choose their preferred approach. Interestingly, even our most tech-savvy clients opted for the personal touch. As one CEO put it, algorithms don't understand nuance, and consultants who hide behind them don't understand business. Marcus eventually left to start his own digital-first consulting firm. Last I heard, he was struggling to attract major clients. Lisa thrived in her new role, training a new generation of lawyers to read not just the letters of contracts, but the relationships behind them. And me? I kept doing what I'd always done, building and maintaining personal relationships, one handshake at a time. One afternoon, about a year after the attempted coup, I sat with a group of young consultants, sharing stories over coffee. But how did you know? One of them asked. How did you know to protect yourself with those contract clauses 20 years ago? I smiled, remembering the lessons my father had taught me about business in his small grocery store in Boston's Chinatown. Because relationships are built on trust, I said, but contracts should be built on wisdom. The trick is knowing the difference. My phone buzzed. A message from James Morrison, competitor trying to pitch us their AI-driven consulting solution. Told them we prefer the old-fashioned way, your way. I showed the message to the young consultants. See, some things never go out of style. As I looked around at their eager faces, I realized that my old-fashioned methods would live on long after I actually did retire, not because of contracts or clauses, but because they worked, because in a world of increasing automation and digital distance, personal relationships matter more than ever. And that's a lesson worth protecting, even if it takes a near disaster to prove it. The following week, we had our annual client appreciation dinner. As I looked around the room at the faces I'd known for decades, at the relationships I'd built and protected, I felt a deep satisfaction. Marcus's digital transformation vision had its place, but it would never replace the value of a firm handshake, a shared meal, a remembered birthday, a crisis weathered together. Sarah caught my eye from across the room and raised her glass slightly. She, at least, had remembered why we started this firm in the first place. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what others tried to build, it's about protecting what you already built so well that they can't destroy it even when they try. Even if it takes a few carefully worded contracts to prove it. See.
My name is Julie, and I'm 36 years old. I take pride in being neat and well organized. I work as an auditor for a big company, and my sharp eye for details helps me both at work and in my personal life. My friends often joke about how much I love keeping things in order, especially when it comes to money. I always keep my receipts and make sure to pay my taxes on time. But for me, these habits are important for keeping my life on track. Now, let me tell you how I met my husband, Adam. We first met at a gathering hosted by our mutual friend, Kelly. That evening, I was enjoying some wine and chatting with old college friends when Adam arrived. He was a little older than me, confident, and had a charming smile. He worked as a manager at a food sales company. Hey, I'm Adam. Do you mind if I join you? He asked, holding a beer and looking at me. Sure. I'm Julie. Nice to meet you, I replied with a smile. We connected right away, bonding over our love for hiking and classic rock. A few months later, Adam invited me to a barbecue at his sister Madison's house. It was my first time meeting his family. Madison welcomed us warmly, but her kids were wild, running around, yelling and throwing toys. I felt uncomfortable with all the chaos, but Adam didn't seem to mind. He actually found their energy funny. As our relationship grew, Adam proposed to me during a beautiful hike. It was a simple but perfect moment, just the two of us standing on top of a hill with an amazing view of the valley. Our wedding was beautiful too, though not without challenges. Madison's kids were just as energetic as ever, and while Adam laughed at their antics, I quietly struggled with my frustration. After getting married, we decided it was time to buy a home and move out of our rented apartment. One evening, we sat down to go over our finances, excited to start this new journey together. With our shared love for organization and adventure, we were ready for the next chapter of our lives. I felt hopeful about our future, even though Adam's family sometimes brought challenges. As we moved forward with buying a home together, we had to figure out how to fully combine our lives. "Julie, we need to decide how to split our expenses," Adam said one evening while relaxing on the couch. "Yeah, I've been thinking about that too," I replied. "I can handle buying furniture, appliances, and some art to decorate. What about you?" Adam, who loved giving surprises, had a different idea. "How about I buy you a new car? I know your old one has been giving you trouble," he said with a kind smile. I was thrilled. My car was barely holding up, and the idea of having a reliable new one made me so happy. We started house hunting with excitement, and after a few weeks, we found a beautiful home. It was a little expensive, but we decided it was worth it. Moving in was hectic, but decorating the house was a lot of fun. I spent hours picking out stylish, good quality furniture and appliances. Not long after we settled in, Adam surprised me with a shiny, brand new sedan. "Adam, this is amazing. Thank you so much," I said, hugging him tightly, overwhelmed with happiness. Life in our new home started off great. We both did well at work and enjoyed our cozy space. But not everything was perfect. The relaxed attitude that I once found charming in Adam started to annoy me, especially when it came to household chores. One evening, after a long day, I asked him to help with the dishes. Julie, I had a rough day." "Can't it wait until tomorrow?" he said, looking at me with tired eyes. But I wanted to keep the house clean, so I insisted. He sighed but finally agreed to help. A few months into our marriage, I started to realize that balancing love, responsibilities, and personal habits was not always easy. I started to worry that I might not be able to get pregnant. It was stressful, and even though the doctor told me to be patient, I couldn't help but feel anxious. To make things harder, Adam's sister, Madison, who lived in another state, visited often and always brought chaos with her. Every time she came over, she would unload all her marriage problems on me. "Julie, you won't believe what Jerry did this time," she would say, clearly frustrated. I tried to change the subject to get a break from all the drama, but she wouldn't stop. Her kids were just as disruptive, running around, fighting, and making a mess. After a long work week, all I wanted was some peace, but with them around, that seemed impossible. "Guys, please calm down," I would say, trying to restore some order. "Why are you always so uptight, Julie?" Madison would snap back, making things even more tense. Even with these challenges, Adam and I tried to focus on our life together. We loved our home and had big dreams, but dealing with family and personal struggles made things complicated. Every time I asked Madison's kids to behave, I felt like I was fighting a losing battle. "They're making a mess, Madison." "I just cleaned the house," I said, my patience wearing thin. Then one day, when I finally expressed my frustration, Madison fired back sharply. "Well, maybe if you had kids of your own, you'd understand." Her words hit me hard, not just because they were cruel, but because she knew about my struggles with getting pregnant. I couldn't believe Adam just stood there, saying nothing. "Adam, are you really going to let her talk to me like this?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. To my shock, he just brushed it off. "Julie, calm down. You're making a big deal out of nothing," he said, taking Madison's side again. "It's not nothing. She insulted me in our home." I cried, my eyes filling with tears. I was at my breaking point, tired of being disrespected in my own house and hurt that my husband wouldn't stand up for me. I knew something had to change. The vase. That Tuesday, Madison showed up unannounced with her kids, saying she needed a break and was going shopping. Fine, Madison, but make it quick, I said, my stress obvious. She thanked me and rushed out, leaving me with her kids and a sinking feeling of dread. I was in the kitchen trying to make dinner. I like to cook carefully and take my time, but with the kids running around and making noise, it was impossible to focus. Can you guys keep it down? I called out, hoping for a little peace. They ignored me. A few moments later, I heard a loud crash from the living room. My heart dropped. I ran in to see what had happened. On the floor, in pieces, lay my grandfather's antique Chinese vase, shattered. My chest tightened as I took in the mess. What happened here? I demanded, my voice shaking. The kids stood frozen, guilt written all over their faces. We were just playing, one of them mumbled, avoiding my eyes. That vase was priceless. It belonged to my grandfather. Do you have any idea what you've done? I was furious. My whole body trembled with anger. Just then, Adam walked in, calm as ever, completely unaware of what was happening. What's going on? He asked. I pointed at the broken vase. Your nephews just destroyed my grandfather's vase. Look at this mess. Instead of understanding my frustration, Adam brushed it off. Calm down, Julie. It's just a vase. We can get it fixed, he said casually. His words made me even angrier. It's not just about the vase, Adam. It's about respect. Every time Madison comes over, our house turns into a disaster, and you don't seem to care. I shouted, my voice cracking from frustration. At that moment, Madison walked in, shopping bags in hand, looking annoyed by the noise. What's all the yelling about? She asked. I pointed at the broken vase. Your kids broke my grandfather's vase, Madison. Look at this mess. Instead of apologizing, she rolled her eyes. Well, maybe you should have watched them better, she said. I was stunned. Are you kidding me? They're your kids. Madison, I shouldn't have to babysit them. I snapped, my anger boiling over. Adam sighed and shook his head, looking annoyed. You're overreacting, Julie.
Just drop it, he said.
That was it. I had reached my limit. Overreacting? I've had enough of this. I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter in my own home. I finally stood up for myself, determined to make a change. The disrespect had gone too far, and I knew something had to change for the sake of my happiness and self-respect. Tears filled my eyes as I shouted, but Adam just stood there, silent and emotionless. Madison, on the other hand, had a smug look on her face, as if she had won. Overwhelmed with anger, hurt, and betrayal, I stormed out of the room. Dealing with Madison and her kids had already been exhausting for months, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. The bombshell. The next morning, Adam sat at the kitchen table, casually eating his toast. Then, as if he were talking about the weather, he dropped a bombshell. Julie, I need to tell you something. Madison is getting divorced, and she and the kids are moving in with us for a few months, he said. I nearly dropped my coffee. Are you serious? Our house is already crazy when they visit for just a day. How are we supposed to live with them for months? I asked, completely shocked. She's my sister, Julie. She needs our help. You need to be more understanding, he replied, looking at me like I was being unreasonable. Understanding? I've been nothing but patient. But this is too much. Why can't we rent a place for her nearby? I'll even pay for the first month's rent, I suggested, trying to stay calm. No, she'll be better off here. Plus, you can help with the kids and keep things organized, he said, as if it was the most logical solution. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm not a babysitter, Adam. I work too, and I need to rest when I come home. I argued, feeling my frustration rise. Stop being so selfish, Julie. It's family. They need us, he shot back, his tone growing sharper. I'm not being selfish. I just want a fair solution. I won't let my life be completely turned upside down, I said, my anger boiling over. Well, they're coming tomorrow evening, so you better get used to it, he declared, standing up and walking out of the kitchen. I stood there, completely stunned, my heart pounding. I felt betrayed. The next morning, Still fuming from our argument, I woke up with one thought in my mind. I couldn't keep living like this. I got dressed for work and went to grab my car keys, but they were nowhere to be found. Confused, I called Adam. His voice was calm, almost too calm. I took the car. It's mine, remember? I'm giving it to Madison so she can use it for the kids, he said casually. I was stunned. You're giving my car to Madison? Are you serious right now? It's not your car, Julie. I paid for it, and she needs it more than you do, he replied like it was no big deal. That was the last straw. Adam, you've taken everything from me. And I'm done, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Julie, don't be dramatic, he scoffed, clearly not understanding how deeply hurt I was. I stood there, gripping my phone, feeling like I was trapped in a nightmare. How had things gotten this bad? I couldn't take it anymore. Calling the movers. Determined, I made a call. Hi, I need a team to move some furniture and appliances today.
It's urgent, I said.
A few hours later, the movers arrived. I walked them through the house, pointing at everything that needed to go. Take it all: beds, sofas, chandeliers, even the bathroom faucets. As they carried each piece out, I felt lighter. Watching the house empty gave me a strange sense of relief. I directed them to take everything to my mother's house. It was time for a fresh start, free from all the stress and chaos. Once the house was cleared, I tipped the movers and thanked them. Then, I grabbed my essentials and left for my mom's place. The knock at the door. Within a few hours, my phone started buzzing over and over again. It was Adam. I ignored his calls, feeling a mix of nerves and newfound strength. That evening, there was a loud knock at my mom's door. I opened it to find Adam standing there, his face red with anger. What the hell, Julie? What did you do? He yelled, barging into the living room. I took my belongings, Adam. You took the car, so I took what I bought, I said, staying calm. This is insane. You stripped the house bare. Where are Madison and the kids supposed to sleep? He shouted. That's your problem, Adam. You made this mess. Now you deal with it, I replied, crossing my arms. You're a thief, Julie. You stole everything, he accused, waving his arms wildly. I didn't steal anything, I said coolly, pulling out a folder. Here are the receipts. I handed him the proof of purchase for every single item. He flipped through them, his anger turning into frustration. Fine, Julie. If this is how you want to play it, I'll file for divorce, he snapped. I took a deep breath. And handed him a stack of papers. Already done. Here are the divorce papers. Sign them and we're finished, I said firmly. Adam looked at the papers, his face turning pale. You're really serious about this, aren't you? He asked. Dead serious, Adam. I deserve better than this, I replied, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. Without another word, he pulled a pen from his pocket, signed the papers, and handed them back to me. Fine, Julie. Have it your way, he muttered. I watched as he turned and walked out of my mom's house, slamming the door behind him. I stood still for a moment, feeling both relieved and sad at the same time. It's over. It was over. And deep down, I knew I had made the right decision. That night, I sat down with my mom and told her everything that had happened. She listened patiently, then gave me a reassuring hug. Julie, you've been through so much. It's time to focus on you and your happiness, she said kindly. Thanks, Mom. I just need some time to figure things out, I replied, feeling a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Over the next few days, I started adjusting to my new life, organizing my space at my mom's house and thinking about what came next. It was a fresh start, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I knew things wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I had taken back control of my life, and there was no turning back. Moving forward, after the divorce, Adam and I sold our house and split the money. I decided it was time to find my own place. One afternoon, while sitting in the kitchen with my mom, I scrolled through apartment listings on my laptop. Mom, I think I found the perfect place. It's a small apartment downtown, close to work, I said, showing her the pictures. She leaned over my shoulder and smiled. That looks nice, Julie. Have you called the realtor yet? Not yet, I said, feeling excited about taking this next step. All right, I'm doing this now, I told myself, a flutter of excitement in my stomach. I picked up my phone, dialed the number, and waited. After a few rings, a warm voice answered. Hello, this is Brandon. How may I assist you today? Hi, Brandon. My name is Julie. I saw your listing for the downtown apartment. Is it still available? I crossed my fingers under the table and asked, Is it still available? Yes, it's still on the market. Would you like to come see it? Brandon's voice sounded hopeful. That would be perfect. How about tomorrow afternoon? I tried to keep my voice steady. That works for me. Let's meet at 5 p.m., Brandon confirmed. We ended the call, and the next day I was downtown, ready to meet him and see the apartment. Brandon was standing outside the building, his smile warm and welcoming. Hi, Julie. Great to meet you. Let's take a tour, he said, offering a handshake. The apartment was small but cozy, with a neat kitchen, a spacious living room, and a small balcony that had a lovely view of the city skyline. This place is perfect, Brandon. I'll take it, I said, feeling a wave of relief. Moving day. After signing the lease and getting the keys, I started planning my move. The next few days were busy with packing at my mom's house and arranging for movers. On moving day, my mom and a few friends helped load the last box into the truck. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness about this fresh start. Julie, this is a wonderful new beginning for you, my mom said, giving me a hug. Thanks, Mom. I'm looking forward to making this place my own, I replied with a smile. We drove to my new apartment, and with everyone's help, we quickly unpacked and set things up. As I looked around my new home, I felt proud and at peace. It was the start of something new, and I was ready. Dinner with friends. That evening, I invited my mom and friends over for dinner to celebrate. We sat on the floor among boxes, eating pizza and laughing. To Julie and her new adventure, my friend Kelly toasted, raising her soda. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate all the support, I said, feeling truly grateful. As the night went on, we shared stories and laughed, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely happy. Later, I sat on my balcony, gazing at the city lights, thinking about how far I had come. I was proud of myself for taking control of my life. Through friends, I heard that Adam had used his share of our savings to buy a small apartment. He was now living there with Madison and her 4 kids, struggling to keep up with expenses while working 4 jobs. Madison and he were constantly arguing. Unexpected call. One day, out of nowhere, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Adam. I was surprised but couldn't ignore my curiosity. Hello, Adam. What's up? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Julie, please just hear me out, he said, his voice sounding desperate. I know I messed up, and I'm so sorry for everything, Adam said. As I listened, I realized how much I had grown. My life was different now, full of new beginnings and positive changes. I never really understood what you were going through until now, he admitted. Seeing how difficult it is with Madison's kids, I finally get it. I let out a small chuckle. Really, Adam? It took you this long to figure that out? I asked, shaking my head in disbelief. I know it's late, but I mean it. I've done a lot of thinking, and I miss you. I miss us. Can we start fresh? I'll move into your place and make things right, he said, his voice full of hope. I laughed. I couldn't help but laugh, shaking my head. Adam, you can't be serious. You think you can just walk back into my life, like nothing ever happened. Julie, I mean it. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll even take on extra work to make it up to you, he insisted, sounding desperate. I sighed, feeling both pity and frustration. Adam, I've moved on. I'm happy now, and I don't want to go back to that chaos, I said firmly. Come on, Julie. We can make it work this time. I've changed, he pleaded. Adam, it's over, I said, my voice calm but firm. You need to focus on your own life and your family. I'm not interested in going back to that mess. Julie, please. I'm begging you, he said, his voice breaking. Adam, no. I've found peace without you, and I'm not giving that up, I said, standing my ground. I took a deep breath. Take care, Adam. I hope you find your way. Then I hung up. I felt a wave of relief. This was closure, the final break from a life I had worked hard to leave behind. No matter how much Adam was struggling, I couldn't let him drag me back into something I had fought to escape. Coffee with Kelly. Later that day, I met Kelly for coffee and shared what had happened. You won't believe who called me today, I said, rolling my eyes. Kelly raised an eyebrow. Who? Adam. He begged me to take him back and let him move into my apartment, I said, shaking my head. Kelly nearly choked on her coffee as she burst into laughter. Are you serious? What did you say? I told him no, of course. I'm not going back to that disaster, I said, smiling. We spent the afternoon chatting and laughing, and it hit me how much I had grown, how far I had come. I was free. I had built a new life for myself, one filled with peace and happiness. I was determined not to let anyone disturb that. As I walked home, a deep sense of relief and closure filled me. I had finally moved on from that part of my life, ready to step forward with confidence and joy. My name is Susan, and I just finished high school. I live, or I guess I should say lived, with my parents, Jessica and Kevin Mitnick, in a small 3-story house in Maryland. I also have an older brother, Mark. He moved out a few years ago to a nearby city. He's 26 now, 8 years older than me, and has always been the favorite. Growing up, I saw how my parents did everything for Mark. If he showed even a little interest in something, they made sure he had the best. When he wanted to play hockey, they bought him top-quality gear. When he got into drawing, they got him the finest art supplies. When he wanted a skateboard, they got him a custom board. It didn't matter that he lost interest after a few months. They were always ready to spend money on whatever he wanted next. One Christmas, I remember something that really hurt. Mark's birthday is a week before Christmas. The year he turned 17, my parents bought him an expensive gaming computer he had been talking about for months. It must have cost a fortune. Then, on Christmas morning, I opened my gift and found a card that just said Merry Christmas. They told me they had run out of money. That's how it always was. Mark's birthdays were big celebrations with amazing gifts. For Christmas, I got whatever was left, if anything. My birthdays? They barely noticed. Maybe a small cake, a new shirt, or some school supplies. No parties, no special moments. That's why I was completely shocked when my parents sat me down in the living room last week, just days after I graduated. Susan, Mom said, smoothing her shirt like she always does when she's trying to act normal. We've been thinking, you're turning 19 soon, and that's a big deal. We want to throw you a Real party. I almost choked on my coffee. A party? I asked. I must have heard wrong. Dad nodded, looking more excited than usual. Yes, sweetheart. We'll invite the whole family and make it a real celebration. I just sat there, staring at them. Something felt off. My parents weren't the type to suddenly change their ways for no reason. I could feel it in my gut. There had to be a catch. Why now? Asked, trying not to sound too suspicious. You've never wanted to throw me a party before. Mom waved her hand, like it was no big deal. Well, you're graduating high school and going to college soon. It's different now. You're becoming an adult. I nodded slowly, but something still didn't feel right. The way they were acting, the sudden interest in celebrating my birthday, it was all too convenient. But I couldn't figure out exactly what was wrong. Over the next few days, I actually started looking forward to the party. Maybe I was being too harsh. After all, it made sense. I was turning 19, had graduated with honors, and was heading to college. Maybe my parents finally realized I deserved some attention too. I kept catching Mom on the phone, speaking in a low voice about party plans. She was ordering a fancy cake, choosing decorations, and making a guest list. Even Dad seemed unusually involved, cleaning up the backyard and fixing the wobbly patio furniture he had ignored for months. Do you need any help? I asked one afternoon when I found Mom in the kitchen surrounded by party planning notes. She jumped a little and quickly gathered the papers. No, sweetie. We want this to be a surprise. Just focus on enjoying your special day. I shrugged and grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. Okay, if you're sure. By the way, is Mark coming? Of course he is, Mom said, but something in her voice sounded off. He wouldn't miss his little sister's big day. I wanted to believe her, but Mark hadn't answered any of my texts all week. Typical Mark, always too busy with his own life to care about anyone else's. 3 days before the party, I went downstairs for a glass of water. That's when I heard my parents talking in the kitchen. I normally wouldn't listen in on my parents' conversations, but something about Dad's tone made me stop at the top of the stairs. "Kevin, are you sure everything will be perfect?" Mom sounded nervous. "Your mother is very picky about these things." I froze. Grandma Margaret was coming? She lived in New York and hardly ever visited. The last time I saw her was almost 3 years ago. "Jessica, we have to make this work," Dad said quickly. "Mom needs to see that we're making an effort with Susan. You know how she feels about how we treat the kids." I know, Mom sighed. "She's always saying we favor Mark. And we really can't afford to upset her right now. That money she gave us last year is the only thing keeping us afloat. If she decides to stop helping us..." Their voices got lower, but I had already heard enough. Suddenly, everything made sense. The surprise party, the decorations, the excitement.
None of it was about me.
They weren't celebrating my birthday because they cared. They were doing it to impress Grandma Margaret. I sank down onto the top step, my chest tight with disappointment. Grandma Margaret had always been different from my parents. She never fell for Mark's charm and actually paid attention to me. Every time she visited, she pointed out how unfairly I was treated. And she was rich. She lived in a beautiful old house in New York and had helped my parents with money several times. Now it was clear. My parents weren't throwing this party to make up for years of ignoring me. They were putting on a show, pretending to be good parents, so Grandma Margaret would keep helping them financially. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to the sound of voices outside. Mom's overly cheerful tone carried through the open window. I peeked outside and my heart jumped. Grandma Margaret was here, stepping out of her simple Toyota Camry. I quickly threw on some clothes and rushed downstairs, almost crashing into Dad in the hallway. The moment Grandma saw me, her face lit up with a warm smile, something I hadn't seen much of in this house. She opened her arms, and I ran straight into them. "There's my beautiful girl," she said, hugging me tight. She smelled like fresh-baked cookies and that soft lavender soap she always used. She pulled back and looked me over, her eyes sparkling. "A high school graduate already. What's next for you, sweetheart?" We moved into the living room, where Mom had arranged the furniture to look like something out of a home decor magazine. I sat next to Grandma on the sofa while my parents sat nervously on the edge of their seats. "Well," I started, trying to ignore Mom's intense stare. "I actually got accepted into several colleges. 2 of them offered me spots." "That's wonderful." Grandma squeezed my hand. "Tell me about them." "The State University offered me a full scholarship," I said, noticing my parents nodding approvingly. "And then there's Brixworth College." I hesitated. My parents thought this wasn't an option. It's a really great private school, but tuition is about $30,000 a year. Grandma nodded thoughtfully, a small smile on her lips. She didn't say anything, but something about her expression made me think she was already coming up with a plan. The doorbell rang as guests started arriving, first Aunt Rebecca and Uncle Timothy, then my cousins, followed by some family friends. Mom rushed around, playing the perfect hostess, while Dad grilled food in the backyard. But one person was missing: Mark. I tried calling him 4 times, but each time it went straight to voicemail. When I asked Mom about him, she just said he was busy with his auto parts business, but would definitely congratulate me later. By mid-afternoon, the party was in full swing. The backyard was filled with the sound of relatives chatting and the smell of grilled food. I tried to enjoy myself, but something felt off. My parents kept hovering around Grandma Margaret, making sure her glass was always full and her plate never empty. They were acting way too eager to please. I had just finished a piece of birthday cake when Grandma suddenly stood up, tapping her fork against her glass. The chatter stopped, and everyone turned to look at her. "I'd like to say something," she announced, her voice strong and clear. "Today, we're celebrating not just Susan's 19th birthday, but also her acceptance into college." She smiled warmly at me. Susan, honey, I've watched you grow into an incredible young woman. Unlike some people, she paused for a second. You've always worked hard and never taken anything for granted. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I saw Mom nervously tearing apart a paper napkin. When you told me about your acceptance to Brixworth College, Grandma continued, I could see how much you wanted to go, even though you thought it was out of reach. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. That's why I've decided to give you a special gift. She walked over and handed me the envelope. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a check. And when I saw the amount, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I blinked and looked again. $150,000. Grandma smiled at the shocked crowd. Enough to cover your tuition at Brixworth College. For a moment, everything was silent. Then chaos. Aunt Rebecca let out a gasp so loud it could have sucked the air out of the yard. Uncle Timothy started clapping, and soon everyone joined in. My cousins were cheering and shouting. I just sat there, staring at the check, tears running down my face. This wasn't just money. This was freedom. A chance to go to my dream school without drowning in debt. Grandma, I choked out, standing up to hug her. I can't believe this. Thank you so much. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my parents. They weren't clapping. Mom looked pale, and Dad looked like he had been hit by a truck. They were whispering to each other, glancing at the check in my hands. I spent the rest of the evening with Grandma. She told me stories about her college days and gave me advice about living on campus. For the first time, someone in my family was actually excited about my future. As the sun set, guests started leaving. The yard was covered with empty plates and half-finished drinks. Grandma decided to spend the night, saying she was too tired to drive home. I helped her get settled in the guest room, happy to have a little more time with her. The next morning, after breakfast, Grandma hugged me tightly and promised to call soon to help me plan for college. I watched her car disappear down the street, still barely believing what had happened. That evening, Mark finally showed up. He walked in without knocking, looking like he'd been sucking on lemons. His expensive designer clothes were wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Happy birthday, sis, he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. No hug, no card, not even a small gift. He went straight to the kitchen where our parents were, leaving me standing alone in the hallway. Dinner that night was so tense, you could cut the air with a knife. Mark sat across from me, slouched in his chair, scrolling through his phone. Dad cleared his throat a few times before finally speaking. Susan, honey, we need to have a serious family discussion, he said, setting down his fork. He glanced at Mark. Your brother has been going through a rough time. His auto parts business, well, things haven't been going as planned. Mark finally looked up from his phone. His face was pale and tired. The banks are all over me, he muttered. I took out loans to expand, but the market crashed. Now they want their money back. I let out a short laugh. Really? Because your Instagram shows you in Lihu last month, with different girls in every photo. Mark's face turned red. Stay out of my social media, he snapped. That's none of your business. Calm down, both of you, Dad interrupted. Susan, this is serious. Your brother could lose everything. I pushed my plate away, my appetite gone. What does this have to do with me? Mom and Dad exchanged one of those looks, the kind that meant they had planned this conversation in advance. Well, sweetheart, Mom said in her sweetest voice, family always helps family. That's what we've always taught you, right? A cold feeling crept over me. I suddenly knew where this was going. We think, Dad continued, that the money Grandma gave you could really help Mark out of this situation. I stared at them in shock. You want me to give Mark my college money? It makes perfect sense. Mark jumped in, suddenly excited. My business is already set up. It's more important than some college degree you might not even use. That money is for my education, I said, my voice rising. Grandma gave it to me for Brixworth. You got a full ride to state, Mom argued. You can still go to college. But Mark needs this money now.
No.
The word came out firm and clear. That money is mine. Grandma gave it to me. Their faces changed instantly. Dad shot up from his chair, his hand gripping my wrist like a vice. "You go to your room right now," he snarled, yanking me away from the table. I cried out in pain, but he ignored me. "And you'll stay there until you come to your senses. Don't even think about calling your grandmother. If you tell her anything, you're out of this house forever. Do you understand me? We will disown you." That night, I lay in bed, listening to the house settle. My wrist still ached where Dad had grabbed me. Around midnight, I heard my parents and Mark talking downstairs. Their voices were low and angry, but I couldn't make out the words. Eventually, the house went quiet. By 6 a.m., I had made up my mind. I pulled my backpack from under the bed and started packing. First, my important documents: birth certificate, social security card, high school diploma. Then my laptop. Some clothes. Toiletries. I checked my wallet. I had about $500 saved from my part-time job at the library. The check from Grandma was safely hidden inside a book. I kept the check on my nightstand. Now, I carefully added it to my documents, double-checking that everything important was safe. Moving quietly, like a ghost, I crept down the stairs, avoiding the third step that always creaked. The house was dark and silent, except for Dad's loud snoring from the master bedroom. In the living room, I grabbed my phone charger. In the kitchen, I took a few granola bars. The morning air was cool as I slipped out the back door. I didn't look back. At the train station, my phone started buzzing. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Declined. Mark called next. Declined.
Dad.
Declined. Then the messages started flooding in. "Where are you?
Come home right now."
You're being ridiculous. Think about your brother. If you don't come back immediately, you'll regret it." I turned off notifications and bought a train ticket to New York. The train wouldn't leave for another hour, so I sat in the station cafe, gripping my backpack tightly against my chest. Every noise made me jump. By late afternoon, I finally reached Grandma Margaret's house. She opened the door, her eyes wide with surprise. "Susan, what on earth?" She pulled me inside. "Your father called me this morning," she said, closing the door behind us. "He told me you ran off with some boy and were planning to waste your college money on parties." "That's a lie," I blurted out. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking. "They wanted me to give the money to Mark," I said. "His business is failing, and they tried to force me to hand over my college fund. When I refused, I touched my wrist, where bruises were already forming. Dad locked me in my room and threatened me if I told you." Grandma's face changed from worried to furious. Without a word, she pulled out her phone and dialed Dad's number, putting it on speaker. "Kevin," she said sharply. "Yes, Susan's here." "Oh, thank God," Dad's voice crackled through the speaker. "Mom, she's been acting out, making up stories." "Save it." Grandma cut him off. She spoke coldly. "She told me everything. About Mark's failing business, about you trying to steal her college fund, about you threatening her." "She's lying." Mom's voice chimed in. "She's just being dramatic." I said, "Save it." Grandma's voice was like ice. "For years, I've watched you favor Mark. I've watched you spoil him while ignoring Susan. And I've helped you financially, over and over again, hoping you would change." She took a deep breath. "Well, I'm done. From this moment, you can consider my financial support ended. And tomorrow, I'll be calling my lawyer to update my will. You and Mark won't be seeing a single penny." Then she hung up. She turned to me, her face softening. "You'll stay here with me until college starts," she said firmly. "And don't worry about a thing." Living with Grandma Margaret was like stepping into a whole new world. Every morning, I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and whatever she was baking. Her specialty was apple pie, but she also made the best blueberry muffins. I helped around the house, doing the cleaning and laundry. Not because Grandma asked me to, I just wanted to do my part. We fell into a simple routine, sharing meals, watching old movies, and talking about everything and nothing. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mom, Dad, and Mark tried everything: calls, texts, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Their messages went from guilt-tripping to angry to manipulative. I ignored them all. The summer passed quietly. Finally, August arrived, and it was time for me to start at Brixworth. Grandma helped me move into my dorm, making my bed with fresh sheets and arranging my things neatly. My roommate, Emma, seemed nice, and for the first time in my life, I felt excited about the future. The first month of college flew by. Classes were tough, but fascinating. I made friends. I even joined the campus newspaper. For once, I wasn't living in Mark's shadow. I was just Susan, finding my own way. Then one Friday, my resident advisor knocked on my door. "Susan, your parents are here. They're waiting at the campus coffee shop." My stomach dropped. I knew this was going to happen eventually. I found them sitting at a corner table. They looked different, tired, deflated. "Susan," Mom said, reaching for my hand. I kept mine firmly in my lap. "You look good. What do you want?" I asked, getting straight to the point. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We wanted to apologize," he said. "We were wrong to try and take your college money. We were wrong to threaten you. We were wrong about a lot of things." I stayed quiet, waiting. There was always more with them. Dad cleared his throat. "We were hoping maybe you could talk to your grandmother about her will. We're not asking for your money anymore, but—"
"No."
I said it simply. "If you want to fix things with Grandma, talk to her yourselves. I'm not getting involved." They exchanged frustrated looks. "Susan, be reasonable," Dad started. "I am being reasonable," I said. "For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first. If you want to fix things with Grandma, that's between you and her." Mom's face hardened. "So that's it? You won't help your family at all?" I stood up, gathering my things. You know what's funny?" I said. "When you wanted my money, it was family helps family. But you never helped me. Ever. It only goes one way with you, doesn't it?" I got a call from Aunt Rebecca. At first, I almost didn't answer. She had always been more on Mom's side. But something made me pick up. "Susan, are you sitting down?" she asked in a hushed voice, like she was about to share a huge secret. "I thought you should know what's happening back home. Mark's business, it's completely failed. He owes the banks hundreds of thousands. He's moved back in with your parents." I let that sink in. Mark, the same Mark who had always looked down on my college plans, was back in his childhood bedroom. "And your parents," Aunt Rebecca continued, "they're using their retirement savings to help him. They're even talking about taking out a second mortgage on the house." Later that week, Grandma called. "I had some visitors today," she said, sounding tired. "Your parents showed up at my doorstep, begging me to help with Mark's debts. Said they were going to lose everything."
She paused.
I told them no. I said they needed to deal with this themselves for once. "How did they take it?" I asked. "As well as you'd expect," she sighed. "Your mother cried. Your father got angry. But I stood my ground. I told them this was the result of years of spoiling Mark while ignoring you." As the semester went on, more news trickled in through family members. Dad had taken a second job. Mom was selling her jewelry. And Mark, somehow, still had the nerve to buy a new iPhone while living at home rent-free. During fall break, I stayed with Grandma. We baked pies together and she helped me with my research for a term paper. She had even set up a proper guest room for me, complete with a desk and everything I needed for studying. One evening, she brought up my midterm grades. "Your grades came in," she said with a proud smile. "Straight A's. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Grandma." I hesitated before asking, "Do you ever regret cutting them off?" She put down her knitting and looked at me seriously. "Not for a second." Then she added, "Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for people is let them face the consequences of their actions." She was right, of course. Sometimes, I felt a little guilty when I heard about my family's financial struggles. But then I remembered all the years of favoritism. All the Christmases where I got a card while Mark got expensive gifts. All the times they ignored my achievements but celebrated Mark's smallest successes. I was doing great at Brixworth, making friends, getting top grades, and planning for a future I had chosen. Meanwhile, my parents were dealing with the mess they had created. It was never my job to fix their mistakes. Last I heard, Mark was already talking about a new business idea, and my parents were still trying to find a way to fund it. Some habits are hard to break, I guess. But I had broken free, thanks to Grandma's gift and, more importantly, her belief in me. My name is Maud, and I'm 41 years old. For many years, I've worked in the sales department of a trading company, climbing the ranks through dedication and hard work. Leadership has always come naturally to me. Even back in school, I had a knack for bringing people together and guiding teams toward success. Now, I manage multiple team members, and my sales performance matches that of even the most experienced male colleagues. The women on my team trust me as a strong and reliable leader, and that trust means the world to me. From the outside, it might seem like I have it all: a stable career, professional respect, and a solid reputation. But when I step through the door of my apartment at the end of the day, I am met with silence. No warm greetings, no shared laughter, no familiar voices. Just me and a space still filled with unpacked boxes, marking the start of this new chapter in my life. Not long ago, I made a life-changing decision. After 18 years of marriage, I chose to separate from my husband, Jake, and for now, I'm living apart from our 16-year-old daughter, Jenna. It wasn't an easy choice, but deep down, I know it was the right one.
Let me tell you why.
The family I left behind. Jake and I had a history that many would call a love story. We were college classmates who reconnected after graduation, and after dating for 3 years, we got married. At first, everything seemed ideal. He worked in the sales department of a printing company before transitioning into a self-employed web designer working from home. I continued my sales career while juggling the responsibilities of being a wife and mother. Our daughter, Jenna, is in 8th grade. She has always been smart and independent, but as she grew older, something changed. One day, out of the blue, she snapped at me. "I told you to buy the moisturizing cream." I had forgotten and apologized, assuring her I would pick it up after work. But her response cut deep. "You're totally useless." I can't believe it. At first, I chalked it up to teenage mood swings, but her words grew sharper each day. Her once warm gaze turned cold. The daughter I had raised with love now looked at me with disdain, as if I were a stranger in my own home. Jake's behavior shifted, too. He and Jenna became closer, but in a way that left me feeling like an outsider. They made plans together without telling me, went out for meals and trips without including me, and even started making financial demands that seemed unreasonable. And then, gradually, even Jake's attitude toward me changed. Our conversations became brief, transactional. There was no warmth, no shared laughter. Just distance. The breaking point. One Thursday morning, I made breakfast as usual, hoping for a peaceful moment together. But instead, it became the final straw. Jake pushed his plate away, his voice sharp. "What the hell is this? I always tell you I want my eggs over easy. Can't you get it right?" Taken aback, I tried to keep my voice calm. "There's no need to be so upset over eggs, Jake." But before I could say more, Jenna chimed in. "And the soup doesn't taste good. Didn't I tell you before that I hate mushrooms?" I looked at them, feeling an unbearable weight in my chest. This wasn't just about breakfast. It wasn't just about teenage rebellion or a grumpy husband. It was about respect, about being treated as a person, not just as a wife and mother who existed to serve them. At that moment, something inside me clicked. I had spent years excusing their behavior, telling myself that things would get better, that it was just a phase, that I was overreacting. But the truth was undeniable. I was in a home where I felt unwelcome, unappreciated, and invisible. I had given them my love, my support, my time, only to be met with indifference and cruelty. Choosing myself. Leaving wasn't easy. Walking away from the life I had built for nearly 2 decades was terrifying. But staying in an environment where I was constantly diminished was even scarier. So I packed my things and moved into a new apartment. It's small, and there are still boxes I haven't unpacked. The silence here is unfamiliar. But for the first time in years, I feel a sense of peace. I am not just a wife or a mother. I am Maud, a woman who works hard, who leads, who deserves kindness and respect. I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I know this. I made the right choice. And I'm ready for whatever comes next. The betrayal I never saw coming. But they're good for you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I had always believed that communication could solve anything. So, in that moment, I turned to Jake, hoping he would step in and say something to our daughter, Jenna. Jake, can't you say something? I asked, my voice barely masking my frustration. But instead of backing me up, he looked at me with a cold stare and replied, What do you mean? It's your fault for not being able to do a single thing you're told. And you're supposed to be an adult.
His words stung like a slap.
I had spent years making sacrifices for my family, yet here I was, being spoken to like an incompetent child. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. I wanted to understand why everything had changed so drastically, but by the time I figured it out, it was already too late. One evening, I overheard Jake making vague plans to go out. This struck me as odd because ever since he started working from home as a freelance web designer, he rarely had any reason to leave the house. A nagging feeling crept into my mind. Something wasn't right. That night, I decided to follow him. My heart pounded as I watched from a distance, praying that my suspicions were wrong. But they weren't. At a cozy little cafe, Jake met a young woman, probably in her 20s, with a perfect figure and an air of confidence that made my stomach twist. I froze as I watched them chatting and laughing like old lovers. When they left the cafe, they walked out arm in arm. I felt lightheaded. My vision blurred with tears, and my body trembled with shock. I wanted to follow them, to see just how deep the betrayal ran, but my legs wouldn't move. The day I had always dreaded had arrived. For years, I had silently feared that Jake would leave me for someone else. I had struggled with my self-esteem, always feeling like I wasn't pretty enough, not good enough. Jake, on the other hand, was undeniably attractive, tall, charismatic, and effortlessly charming. Why did he even choose me? I used to wonder. Now, as I stood there watching him with another woman, I realized that maybe in his heart, he never really had. The shocking truth. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. So, I hired a private investigator to dig into Jake's relationship with this woman. Days later, I received the results. My hands trembled as I flipped through the evidence. Photos of them kissing, holding hands, entering a hotel together. The woman's name was Alyssa Farah, a 27-year-old employee at a cosmetic surgery clinic. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Among the photos, there were some that made my blood run cold. Jenna, my own daughter, was with them. Confused and horrified, I turned to the detective. What does this mean? Why is my daughter in these pictures? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His answer sent a dagger through my heart. It appears that your husband's relationship with Mia is not only known to Jenna, but also approved by her. I couldn't breathe. The air around me felt suffocating. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, knew about Jake's affair. And not only did she know, but she supported it? How had it come to this? What had I done to deserve this level of betrayal? I refused to cry.
Not yet.
Instead, I asked the detective to go further. I needed to hear it with my own ears. I asked him to record their conversations. Days later, I received the audio files. With trembling hands, I pressed play. Jenna's voice came first. She's seriously annoying. She can't even follow simple instructions and then tries to play the mother card. My stomach turned. Was she talking about me? Then Jake's voice came through, calm and calculating. Well, she is technically your mom. Jenna scoffed. Why don't you just dump her already? Mia has been waiting patiently. There was silence before Jake sighed. About that, Jenna. I'm thinking it's still too soon to think about divorce. That doesn't make any sense. Mia has been waiting, right? I've talked it through with her. But I just can't stand breathing the same air as that ugly woman. Ugly woman.
He was talking about me.
Same here. Jenna chimed in. But she earns more money than you. That's the frustrating part.
My heart shattered.
You get it, right? Jake asked. Is that so? I didn't really know. Yeah, that's how it is. If I divorce her carelessly, I won't be able to use that money anymore. We've got to play this carefully. I felt like I was going to be sick. They had a plan. Jake wasn't staying with me because of love, loyalty, or even duty. He was staying because he needed my money. And Jenna, my own daughter, wasn't on it. So, we just pull out all the money we can, and then let Mia move in?
Jenna asked.
That's right, Jake said. I need to check if Mia can handle that kind of life. If not, I'll have to persuade her. I shut the recording off. The betrayal, the humiliation, the cold-hearted calculations. It was too much. I had spent 18 years believing I was building a family, sacrificing for the people I loved. And now, I had undeniable proof that the very people I devoted my life to saw me as nothing more than a wallet, a burden, an inconvenience. I sat there in silence, staring at the floor, feeling like the last pieces of my heart had been shattered beyond repair. Moving forward, that night I made a decision. I would not beg for their love. I would not fight for people who had already cast me aside. I would leave, not just physically, but emotionally. I would walk away from all of it, the manipulation, the cruelty, the heartbreak. I deserved better. And for the first time in years, I finally believed it. The final straw. I think Mia will be fine. She's so understanding. Beautiful women are just different, you know? Yeah, I know. I regret it so much. The biggest mistake of my life was marrying that ugly woman. Hearing those words crushed me. That night, I stood under the hot shower, letting the water wash over me as I cried, deep, uncontrollable sobs. I had spent years sacrificing for my family, only to be treated like I was worthless. But as the water poured down, something inside me shifted. Enough was enough. If this was their plan, to use me and throw me away, so be it. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't weak. Instead of letting them take advantage of me, I decided it was time to take real action. The weeks that followed were tough. Every day, I pushed down my emotions and focused on my preparations. I kept my plan to myself, staying silent and patient, waiting for the right moment to make my move. Graduation day. On the day of Jenna's middle school graduation, I felt nothing. No excitement, no pride, no sadness. Just emptiness. Ugh, I can't decide on a hairstyle. It's so frustrating. Who gave me this face, seriously? Jenna groaned, staring at herself in the mirror. She looked just like me, a fact she never failed to complain about. Normally, I ignored her rude remarks, but what she said next caught my attention. Hey, I need some money. Around $500 should do. I frowned. What does a kid need $500 for? And isn't today your graduation? Obviously. I'm going out with friends afterward. And I'm eating out with Dad, too. I hesitated, but in the end, I handed her the money. This is the last time, I told myself as I did. Jenna snatched the cash without even a thank you. Then she casually added, Hey, I'm going to get plastic surgery soon. I blinked. Plastic surgery?
Yeah.
I'm saying goodbye to this ugly face that looks just like yours. I can't wait for a total transformation before high school starts. She laughed, clearly expecting me to be upset. Huh? I thought you'd be against it. What a letdown. I sighed. It's your body, Jenna. Do what you want.
Exactly.
You know what I mean, right? With a face like this, of course, I want plastic surgery. It's your fault anyway. Her words stung, but I had no energy left to argue. Later that morning, I drove Jenna and Jake to her graduation. But as we neared the school, she suddenly spoke up. Dad, and I will get off here. You can just go home. You know I don't want my friends to see you, right? I gave a small nod. Of course. I didn't care. I had no plans to attend the ceremony, anyway. My escape. Everything was going exactly as I had planned, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I returned to the apartment and waited. A little while later, a moving truck pulled up and 4 men stepped out. All right, we'll pack and move everything out. Given the amount of stuff, it should take about 3 hours. Thank you. I appreciate your help, I said. That day, I left. I moved into a new apartment, leaving behind the past, the pain, and the people who had betrayed me. On the dining table of my old home, I placed the divorce papers, signed and final. And just like that, I was free, cutting ties for good. I had taken time off work and spent my vacation traveling to different places within the country. It felt great to have some freedom for once. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more if Jake and Jenna hadn't kept calling me nonstop. A few days later, I returned to my new apartment, feeling refreshed and ready for my new life. When I finally picked up one of Jake's many calls, he sounded nervous and anxious. "You finally answered. Where are you? What are you doing?" "Just relaxing in my room, watching TV."
Why?
"You sound worried. Did something happen?" "What do you mean, did something happen?"
What do you mean by your room?
"Explain yourself properly." "There's no need to explain. You saw it, didn't you? The divorce papers. That says everything. No explanation is needed." Jake hesitated before speaking again. "So, you knew? About your affair?" "Yes, I knew." There was silence on the other end. Then he tried again. "I have no plans to end our marriage. You know, with your income, you can't support Jenna on your own." I laughed bitterly. "Tough luck. I'm getting a divorce. And I'm taking alimony, too." "Who says I'm going to pay alimony?" "We need to talk about this calmly."
Sure.
"We can talk. You can bring Jenna along if you want, but it doesn't matter to me." I didn't want to see either of them anymore. Before he could argue, I ended the call, turned off my phone, and cut off all contact. The final meeting. For our discussion, I chose a cafe, the same one where Jake had first met Mia. It felt like a fitting place to end things. Jake arrived alone. There was no sign of Jenna. She must still be recovering from her plastic surgery, I thought. Poor girl. Jake looked around, confused. "Who's that with you?" he asked, noticing the man sitting beside me. "This is my attorney, Mr. Thomas." His eyes widened. "You brought a lawyer?" "Of course. Now, did you bring the signed divorce papers like I asked?" Jake crossed his arms. "I told you I won't sign them. No matter how many times you ask, I have no intention of getting a divorce." I sighed. "So, do you just want the money? Do you really think we can continue our marriage for that reason?" Jake looked offended. "Who said I'm after your money? Where did you get that idea? You're making assumptions about my feelings." I shook my head and turned to Mr. Thomas, giving him a nod. He took out his phone, pressed a button, and calmly played an audio recording. Jake's face turned pale the moment he heard it. It was a conversation between him and Jenna, the one from that day. His own voice echoed through the cafe. "I don't want to breathe the same air as that ugly woman. If I divorce her too soon, I won't be able to use the money." Hearing those words again still made my heart ache. But this time I didn't cry. This time I was prepared. Jake clenched his fists. "A recording? What the hell do you think you're doing?" I stayed calm. "I should be the one asking you that. Did you really use the money I gave you to go out with Mia?" Jake opened his mouth to respond, but Mr. Thomas interrupted. "Actually, let's go over the legal side of things first." And just like that, Jake's lies began to crumble. "Just to confirm, you have no plans to divorce, correct?" Mr. Thomas asked. Jake nodded hesitantly. Mr. Thomas continued. "In that case, we will file for divorce through family court. We will also discuss how to divide the assets. The court will review the situation and decide whether the divorce should go through or not." He held up his phone. "This recording of your conversation with your daughter is strong evidence. In my opinion, the divorce is almost guaranteed." Jake stammered, looking nervous. I sighed and placed several documents on the table. "I came here today to talk about what happens next." I pointed to one document. "This shows how much money I gave you, and when. This one is a record of all the utility bills I paid." Jake frowned. "Why are you showing me all this?" Ignoring his question, I placed another paper in front of him. "And this is a record of money withdrawn from our joint account. Jenna's surgery was expensive, wasn't it?" I glanced at the paper. "Eyelid surgery, eye shape correction, double eyelid surgery, nostril reduction, philtrum reduction, creating tear bags, cheek and nasal bone shaving. The total cost was $50,000. There's only about $30,000 left in savings. There used to be $80,000. You've spent a lot, haven't you? Jake turned red. That was for Jenna. I can save up again. I clenched my fists trying to stay calm. Do you realize that most of that money was saved up by me? I took a deep breath and continued. I'm okay with splitting what's left in the account as part of the divorce. And I won't ask you to repay the money used for Jenna's surgery. However, Jake interrupted. However, what? I stared at him, my voice firm. I expect you to pay for the emotional distress I've suffered. Keep that in mind. Jake opened his mouth to protest, but I wasn't finished. And one more thing. Are you still in contact with that woman, Mia? No, not really. That's what I thought. I pulled out another document. I hired a private investigator to look into her. You might want to be careful. She has a criminal record. Jake's face twisted in shock. A criminal record?
What are you talking about?
She was arrested for fraud. She worked with the director of another cosmetic surgery clinic to scam people. Jake's jaw dropped. What the? I crossed my arms. She must have thought you and Jenna were easy targets. My condolences. Jake's voice shook. And what about Jenna's surgery? Did everything go well? I hope so. But if there were any mistakes, we might need to negotiate with the hospital. We might even have to sue. Some clinics try to cover up their mistakes and refuse to take responsibility. Mr. Thomas nodded. Yes, many dishonest clinics deny wrongdoing and refuse to settle. If something went wrong, this could become a serious legal issue. Jake's face turned pale. I picked up my bag. That's all for today. Send the signed divorce papers. You can send them directly to Mr. Thomas, since I won't be giving you my new address. As I stood up to leave, Jake suddenly spoke. Wait, please, one last thing. I turned to look at him.
His voice was weak.
Can you lend me some money? Jake looked truly pitiful. I didn't say a word. I simply walked away. A fresh start. I can't believe I ever fell for a man like Jake. The thought alone makes me ashamed. I left the cafe with Mr. Thomas, not bothering to look back at Jake, who sat there in shock. That chapter of my life was officially closed. Life after divorce. From what I heard, Jake and Jenna's life quickly fell apart after I left. Jake's salary alone wasn't enough to support them. Keeping up with rent and daily expenses became difficult, and they had to move to a smaller, cheaper apartment. Jenna even had to take on part-time jobs like delivering newspapers just to help make ends meet. Jake's web design projects didn't bring in enough money, so he was forced to take on labor jobs just to survive. It was sad, really, but he had to manage somehow. After all, he still had alimony payments to make. I agreed to let him pay in installments because there was no way he could afford the full $40,000 at once. His small business barely brought in enough money, and borrowing from a bank wasn't an option. I could have forced him to take a loan from a shady lender, but I wasn't that cruel. A call from Jenna. A few days later, I got a call from Jenna. As I expected, the surgery had gone wrong. She sounded frustrated. It was a total failure. My face still has scars, and I need another surgery to fix them. It's the worst. We met at a cafe. I hadn't seen her in a long time. She still had bandages on parts of her face. And Mia? I asked. Jenna sighed. She disappeared. You were right, Mom. She only used us for money. She stared out the window, lost in thought. She looked different, more grown up, more serious. Well, I have to go, she said after a moment. I have work, and then I need to finish my homework. High school is really busy. Good luck, I told her. She hesitated, then looked at me. Mom, I'm really sorry for everything. No need to suddenly act all polite, I said, shaking my head. I'm not giving you any money. She gave a small smile. I won't ask for it anymore. With a wave, she left the cafe, moving forward. And that's how I ended up where I am today. I don't have many regrets. In fact, I'm happy with my life now. Jenna is practically independent, and I have no feelings left for Jake. He was never anything special, just a man with a pretty face and nothing else to offer. I actually saw him the other day, working at a construction site. He was covered in dirt, wearing a helmet, looking exhausted. His once charming face was tired and lifeless. I barely recognized him. Making a living is tough, and he's finally experiencing the struggle he once ignored. He wasted so much money, and now he's paying the price. Looks fade, and without anything else to rely on, life becomes harsh. I truly believe that now. As for me, I'm doing my best every day. The future looks brighter than ever. It feels like I've hit the reset button on my life, and I couldn't be more ready for what's ahead. I whispered to myself in shock. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't unlock the door. It had been a long and exhausting day at work, and all I wanted was to go inside and rest. But instead, I found my personal belongings thrown carelessly in front of the entrance, as if they were garbage. I looked at the door and noticed something was different. It looked like it had been changed. No matter how hard I tried, the key wouldn't turn. It was as if the door was refusing to let me in. This was the last straw. I had been through so much over the years while living with my in-laws. Every day had been a struggle, and this moment made it clear. I could not stay there any longer. I made up my mind. I would not step foot in that house again. I gathered my things, packed them into my car, and decided to go back to my parents' home. It felt like the only place I could truly find peace. Months passed, and I tried to move on with my life. Then, out of the blue, I received a message from my in-laws. It was unexpected, and for a moment, I wasn't sure how to feel. The connection between us had seemed broken, yet here they were, reaching out. Let me introduce myself. My name is Olivia, and I am 36 years old. My husband, Henry, is 6 years younger than me. I have always been dedicated to my career. In fact, before I got married, I never thought much about relationships. I had never been on many dates and didn't feel the need to settle down. Marriage wasn't something I had planned for myself. But Henry was different. He worked under me at my job and was persistent in his pursuit. He made it clear that he wanted to be with me and promised that I wouldn't have to give up my career after marriage. He said he would take care of the household chores so I could continue working. His commitment and support made me reconsider my thoughts on marriage. I realized that while I was unsure about getting married, the idea of having children had crossed my mind from time to time. As I neared 36, I knew that if I ever wanted to start a family, I was running out of time. So, I made my decision. I married Henry. At first, things were great. It was just the two of us, and Henry kept his word. He supported me in my career and handled most of the household responsibilities. I appreciated his efforts, and life seemed smooth. But then, everything changed. About 7 months into our marriage, tragedy struck. Henry's father passed away suddenly. He had always been a healthy man, so his death was a complete shock to everyone. My mother-in-law and Henry's younger sister, Helen, were devastated. They said they couldn't manage on their own and needed our support. Helen, who is 34, works as a freelancer. She earns a decent income, but she spends a lot of her time and money on her hobbies. Because of this, she isn't financially stable. My mother-in-law also struggled to cope with the loss. They both expected us to step in and help them. That's when everything in our lives started to change. I always thought Helen should find a full-time job. Whenever she and my mother-in-law came to talk to me, Henry would bring up the idea of all of us living together. Olivia, have you thought about moving in with my mom and sister? You can keep freelancing as usual, and having them around would make house chores easier. What do you think? Henry asked me one day. I hesitated before answering. I'm fine with keeping my work schedule, but I don't know about taking on more chores. If your mom moves in and we're helping her, shouldn't she be responsible for most of the housework? Henry nodded. Fair point. I'll talk to my mom and Helen about it. Please think about it, and we'll wait for their response. I had my own life and financial matters to consider, so I made sure to tell Henry that I wanted everything carefully planned. It might have seemed cold, but I knew that caregiving required proper preparation. In the end, Henry assured me that his family would handle all the housework. I even thought about asking for a written agreement, but decided against it. Since they were family, I chose to trust them, and we moved into Henry's family home. On our first day there, I went to greet my mother-in-law. I'm looking forward to living together. As Henry mentioned, I'll continue working as usual, so I hope you and Helen can manage the house chores, I said politely. She didn't even look at me before replying. Why did Henry marry someone like her? She works, so all the chores will fall on me? Is that what a wife should be? A wife is supposed to handle both work and household duties, isn't she? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wanted to do everything herself, but also seemed to blame me for it. Her words were loud and clear, and then she just walked away. This wasn't what I had expected at all. I stood there, feeling uneasy about our future in that house. Later, as we unpacked our belongings in silence, Helen suddenly appeared at the doorway. She looked at me with disapproval and said, I ended up with a less than adorable sister-in-law. Poor Henry. With that, she left just as quickly as she had come. First, my mother-in-law had made me feel unwelcome, and now Helen was doing the same. I could already tell that living here was going to be much harder than I had imagined. I couldn't understand why they wanted to live with me after speaking so badly about me. Later, I realized it was all about my money. Soon after moving in together, I noticed something troubling. On our first day under the same roof, despite their sarcastic remarks before, my mother-in-law and Helen completely ignored me. They only prepared meals when my husband was home, but never offered to help with cleaning or laundry for me. I tried to bring up their broken promises several times, but whenever I politely addressed my mother-in-law as ma'am, she would glare at me and walk away, making it clear she didn't want to talk. Helen didn't ignore me as openly, but I still felt like I couldn't speak up against either of them. Over time, doing my own laundry and cleaning up after work became my daily routine. I wanted to tell my husband about how they were treating me, but I hesitated because I felt sorry for him. However, things got even worse when they started having financial troubles. They began pressuring me for money, though they avoided asking directly. Instead, they left notes under my food. Just today, I found a note from my mother-in-law. We're struggling this month. Could you lend us $500? I thought about discussing it with my husband, but he was also short on cash because of his social life and drinking habits. He often asked, can we cut down on expenses this month? When he was my subordinate at work, I had always made sure he didn't overspend on unnecessary parties. But after switching departments post-marriage, he found it hard to refuse invitations, and these costs kept adding up. It was difficult for me to bring up my in-laws' financial demands with him. So, reluctantly, I gave in and treated the money as a loan. This pattern continued for 3 years. My husband became more and more comfortable not contributing to household expenses. Instead, he kept telling me to cut back on spending every month as if it was my responsibility alone. I found myself stuck in this cycle, constantly handing over money while my in-laws found new ways to ask for more. I felt trapped. It was like an endless scheme, yet I continued to play along. But there was something else I was still doing. I'll explain that soon. One day, when I returned home from work, I found something shocking. Many of my personal belongings were scattered outside the house. I walked closer, trying to make sense of what had happened. I realized that the scattered belongings were mine. My heart pounded with anger. How could they treat my things so carelessly? Furious, I marched up to the front door and tried to unlock it, only to find that my key no longer worked. They changed the locks while I was gone. I muttered in disbelief. I can't take this anymore. As I stood there, overwhelmed with frustration, my eyes fell on a piece of paper placed beneath my belongings. I picked it up and read the cruel message. Don't ever come back. We don't want to see your face. Consider yourself lucky we didn't throw away your stuff. I clenched my fists. My mother-in-law and Helen were obviously behind this. I wondered if Henry had played a part in it, or if he had simply stood by and let it happen. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. Luckily, I had my car keys. Without wasting time, I gathered as much of my stuff as I could, packed it into the car, and drove straight to my parents' house. A wave of relief washed over me, knowing that at least my belongings were safe. No matter what happened next, my work wouldn't be affected. When I arrived at my parents' home, they were shocked to see me with all my things. But their reaction quickly turned into warm concern as they welcomed me back. It had been 3 years since I had spent any real time here. Sitting at the dining table with a cup of tea my mother had brewed, I finally felt a sense of comfort that I had long forgotten. My father looked at me seriously. Why did you bring all your belongings here? Did you leave their house? Marriage requires patience, Olivia. His words made me think about everything I had endured. For 3 years, my interactions with my mother-in-law and Helen had been minimal, except for the constant notes demanding money. Henry had become completely dependent on my income, treating me like an ATM rather than a partner. I had tolerated everything until now. When I explained everything to my parents, they listened with empathy. My mother sighed, "Olivia, you've been patient enough. We won't ask you to suffer any longer. Now that they've driven you away, there's no reason to go back." "Maybe you should think about sending Henry divorce papers," my father added. "He seemed like a decent man when you married him, but money changes people." It's unfortunate. Hearing their support brought unexpected tears to my eyes. For the first time in years, I felt truly understood. "Has it been that hard on you?" my father asked gently. I wiped my eyes and smiled. "No, it's just, I haven't felt this level of kindness in a long time. It's comforting." I took a deep breath and nodded. "You're right, Dad. I'll send Henry the divorce papers. But I want to watch the situation for a little while. I have a feeling something interesting is going to happen soon." I had a feeling that something was about to happen soon, and surprisingly, it did, just 4 months later. By then, I had moved out of my parents' home and settled into a new apartment of my own. For the first time in a long while, I had full control over my earnings and could spend my money however I pleased. I hired a housekeeping service to take care of the chores, which allowed me to truly enjoy my free time. I treated myself to shopping trips, small vacations, and things I had long wanted but never felt free to buy. Every day, I appreciated the value of my hard-earned money even more. Looking back, I couldn't understand why I had endured those 2 miserable years. It dawned on me that maybe I had been manipulated by my in-laws, tricked into sacrificing my own happiness for their benefit. Then, exactly 4 months after they threw me out and changed the locks, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. At first, I ignored the call, but then it rang again.
And again.
A 5th time in quick succession. Something must be wrong, I thought. I picked up the next call, and before I could even say a word, another call came through. "Olivia, where are you? I went to your parents' house, but they wouldn't tell me anything. I also tried your workplace, but they wouldn't tell me either." It was my mother-in-law. This was someone who had ignored me for 3 years, yet now she was calling me in a panic. Her voice sounded hesitant, even nervous. I remained silent, waiting to see what she would say next. "Hello? Are you still there? Please come back soon and restore our lives. We can't even afford to go out and enjoy ourselves anymore. What are we supposed to do now?" I almost laughed. She was more worried about her leisure time than the fact that they had kicked me out. I thought cutting back on spending would be enough, but clearly it's not. Our phone and electricity are about to be cut off. We're at our wits' end. Please come back immediately. Did she really not see the irony? Shouldn't she start by apologizing for throwing me out? I waited, but no apology came. "Olivia, are you listening? Don't you care that we're struggling?" she added, sounding frustrated. Realizing she had no sense of remorse, I ended the call without a word. The next day, my phone rang again. This time it was Helen. "Olivia, why did you ignore Mom's call yesterday? We're in trouble, and you didn't even try to help." She couldn't even tell if you were listening. Ignoring calls like that is really immature, you know. I sighed. Of course, Helen would call to scold me. For 3 years, they had ignored me, treated me like an outsider, and only spoke to me when they wanted money. And now, suddenly, I was the one in the wrong. I couldn't believe her nerve. I thought about staying on the call a little longer, but without an apology, I had no reason to respond. I heard from Mom that we're having financial troubles at home. Our phone and electricity might be cut off soon. Without air conditioning in this heat, we could suffer from heat stroke.
Can you live with that?
If our phone gets disconnected, how will we reach you? So please come back and help us pay the overdue bills. Her selfish demands made it easy for me to ignore her. Hey, are you listening? You haven't said a word. Oh, are you still upset about what happened 4 months ago? That was just a joke. You're overreacting. As an adult, you should know the difference between a joke and something serious. Stop being stubborn and come back home. They had thrown out my belongings like trash and changed the locks so I couldn't get in. That was a clear message for me not to return. Now, they were trying to convince me that it was just a joke? How could I believe that when Helen didn't even bother apologizing? I decided to end the call. There was no point in wasting more time listening to her nonsense. The next day, I received a call from my husband. Hello, Olivia.
I'm sorry.
My mother, my sister, and we all realize we've done terrible things. Can you come back? Our household is falling apart. We're out of money. Everyone is on edge, and tensions are high. We sincerely apologize and want you back. Please. At least my husband understood the need to apologize, but it was far too late. Why had he ignored me for 4 months? If he had reached out within the first few days, I might have considered coming back. But 4 months had passed. In that time, I had built a new life, and I was finally enjoying my independence. There was no reason for me to go back to that toxic household now. I appreciate your apology, Henry, but after everything that's happened, I have no intention of coming back. I paused before asking, Henry, why were you unreachable for 4 months? How could you do that as a husband? I decided to do some investigating, and guess what? I found out the truth. You've been cheating, haven't you? That's exactly what the detective agency confirmed. For 3 years, you treated me like an ATM, using my money while hiding your lies. Well, I'm done. I'll be sending you the divorce papers soon, so be ready to handle them properly. Maybe my husband thought he would never get caught. What a fool. And yet, he still had the audacity to say, I want you to come back. I smirked and replied, if you pay me back for all the living expenses I covered for the 3 of us over the past 3 years and return the money I lent you, maybe I'll consider it. Let's see, that comes to about $180,000.
Can you manage that?
I knew very well he couldn't afford it, but I wanted to make it clear that I was serious. After a moment of silence, he suddenly hung up the phone. Maybe he finally realized that I was truly done with him. A few days later, I sent him the divorce papers along with the bill for emotional distress. His response was immediate. Without argument, he signed the divorce papers and sent them back. Now, all I had left to do was file them at the city office, and the divorce would be official. As for the compensation, he transferred the money right away. Of course, I had made sure to include a note with the bill, warning him that if he didn't pay up, I would expose his infidelity to his company. Clearly afraid of the consequences, he must have rushed to take out a loan to cover the cost. From what I've heard, their family home is now on the market. It seems they are struggling financially and are desperate to raise funds. However, selling their house in a hurry means they will now have to find a place to rent. Considering how much rent and utilities cost, I doubt they made a smart choice. They probably panicked and didn't think about the long-term consequences. But honestly, their problems are none of my concern anymore. As for me, I'm living my best life. I finally feel free and independent. I'm enjoying my single life, doing the things I love, and making my own choices without anyone taking advantage of me. I've had my fill of marriage, and I have no regrets. My name is Erica, and I was 6 years old when my little sister, Sydney, was born. I remember the day my parents brought her home from the hospital. She was so small, wrapped in a pink blanket. Erica, my mom said, "You're a big sister now. You have to help us take care of Sydney." Those words stayed with me throughout my childhood. Our house was simple but cozy, in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. My parents both had regular jobs. Dad was an accountant and Mom worked as a secretary. We weren't rich, but I always thought we had enough. At least until I noticed that things were different for Sydney and me. As we got older, it became clear that my parents treated us differently. When I was 11 and Sydney was 5, I accidentally broke a plate while washing dishes. My punishment? No TV for a week and extra chores. The next day, Sydney knocked over Mom's favorite vase while running around the house. "She's just a little girl," Mom said, sweeping up the broken pieces. "She doesn't know any better." This kind of thing happened all the time. I had to do chores to earn my allowance, but Sydney got money just because. If I wanted new clothes, I had to wait for special occasions. But if Sydney saw a dress in a store and pointed at it, she got it right away. Every day felt like an endless list of responsibilities. I woke up early to help Sydney get ready for school, walked her to her elementary school before heading to my own, and rushed back after my classes to pick her up. I helped her with homework, made sure she had snacks, and kept her entertained. Then one Friday in October, everything changed. That morning started like any other. I got up early, packed Sydney's lunch, and went to school. I had a math test that day, but my mind kept wandering. In my backpack was a summer camp brochure, something I had been dreaming about. I had been saving my allowance and doing extra chores all year so I could go to a special art camp. My paintings even earned me a small scholarship. Just 7 more weeks, and I would finally be there. During lunch, Mom sent me a text. "Don't forget to pick up your sister at 2:30. As if I could forget, I had been picking her up for years. My math test ran late, but I still ran as fast as I could to Sydney's school. I got there at 2:45. The schoolyard was empty. My heart started pounding. I checked every classroom, the playground, even the bathrooms. No sign of her. "Sydney, have you seen my sister?" I asked the janitor, who was mopping the hallway. "The one with the blue backpack?" "She left with some friends right after the bell." My hands shook as I dialed her number. Straight to voicemail. I called again and again. Nothing. Maybe she went to Jenna's house, I thought, remembering her best friend. I ran 7 blocks, my backpack bouncing on my back. Jenna's mom opened the door. "Sorry, honey, I haven't seen her today." For the next 7 hours, I searched everywhere. The mall where she liked to window shop. The ice cream parlor she always begged me to take her to. The park where she hung out with her friends. My phone battery was dying. My feet were covered in blisters, but I couldn't stop. What if something bad had happened? At 9:10 p.m., I dragged myself home, ready to face my parents' worry and their anger. But when I walked in, there she was, sitting at the kitchen table, calmly eating pizza with Mom and Dad. "Where have you been?" Mom yelled, her face red with anger. "We've been worried sick." I stood there, too shocked to speak. "I've been looking for her everywhere." She wasn't at school, and her phone was off. Before I could say more, Sydney spoke first. Her eyes filled with tears. "That's not true. I waited for hours after school, but Erica never came. My phone died, and I didn't know what to do. I went to my friend's house to call, but no one answered. Then I got lost trying to find my way home." I couldn't believe it. She was lying. I started to speak, but Dad cut me off. "We don't want to hear your excuses, Erica. Your sister could have been hurt. She ended up on the other side of town because of your carelessness." But I was there. The janitor saw her leave with her friends right after school. Enough. Mom slammed her hand on the table. "Go to your room and give me your phone. And forget about summer camp."
What? No.
"I've been saving all year. I even got a scholarship. You should have thought about that before abandoning your sister. Maybe this will teach you responsibility." I looked at Sydney. She was hiding a smirk behind her slice of pizza. And in that moment, something inside me broke. All these years of reading her bedtime stories, buying her treats with my allowance, helping her with homework, it didn't matter. She wasn't my sister. She was just someone who happened to live in the same house. That night, I packed away all the board games we used to play together. I took down the drawings she made for me. I threw out the half-eaten bag of her favorite candy I kept in my desk. From now on, Sydney was just another person who lived in our house. Nothing more. Through middle school and high school, I focused only on my studies. My parents always talked about a college fund. At every family gathering, they proudly told relatives how they had been saving since we were born so both of us could get a good education. Once, I overheard Mom on the phone, mentioning the amount. It was enough to cover 4 years at a state university for each of us. In my junior year, I spent countless nights working on scholarship applications. My SAT scores were nearly perfect, my grades were all A's, and my teachers wrote glowing recommendations. When the acceptance letters arrived, I could hardly believe it. I had received a full scholarship to my top choice university. One evening, I decided to tell my parents the news. "Mom, Dad, I have some good news," I said, holding the scholarship letter. "I got a full ride to college, tuition, room, and board. Everything is covered." Mom looked up from her phone. "That's nice, honey." My heart pounded with hope. "Since you won't need to spend the college money you saved for me, maybe I could use it for something else. I've been looking into it, and it would be enough for a down payment on a small apartment. Or maybe even to start a business after graduation." The room went silent. Dad muted the TV. Mom's voice was sharp. "What college money?" I frowned. "The money you've been saving for our education." Dad cleared his throat. "Erica, that's our money. We saved it. We decide how to spend it." I felt my stomach drop. "But you always said it was for our college education." I protested. "Since I got a scholarship, we should use that money for something else." Mom cut me off. "College is getting more expensive every year. Your sister might need extra help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So because I worked hard and got a scholarship, I don't get anything? How is that fair?" "Life isn't fair," Dad snapped. "And it's not your money to claim. End of discussion." I stormed up to my room, my eyes burning with angry tears. The next few weeks were unbearable. My parents acted like nothing had happened. They talked about graduation and dorm shopping as if they hadn't just crushed my hopes. Whenever I tried to bring up the subject again, they either walked away or changed the topic. As I packed my bags for college that summer, I realized something. I was actually lucky. Lucky that I had worked so hard for that scholarship. Lucky that I hadn't counted on them for my education. Because now I knew the truth. In this family, I could only count on myself. The day I left for college, I quietly loaded my 2 suitcases into an Uber while my family slept upstairs. No tearful goodbyes. No family photos on the front porch. No care package of homemade cookies. Just the quiet click of the front door closing behind me. My first week on campus, I got a job at the university coffee shop. The hours were brutal. 6 a.m. openings before class, weekend shifts while other students went out partying. But it meant I could buy my own textbooks and never have to worry about running out of toothpaste. The only contact I had with my family was short voice messages on birthdays and holidays. "Happy birthday, Mom. Hope you have a great day. Merry Christmas, everyone. Stay warm." They rarely replied. And when they did, it was just as short. "Thanks, sweetie. Take care." One night, when I couldn't sleep, I found myself scrolling through Mom's Facebook page. There they were, dozens of family photos I had never seen before. Sydney, now 15, on stage at her dance recital, dressed in sparkly costumes. Her fancy birthday party, complete with a DJ and professional decorations. Family dinners with aunts, uncles, and cousins, where she was clearly the center of attention. Photos of her winning a school talent show, hanging out with her friends at the mall, smiling on her first day of 9th grade.
But there was nothing about me.
No mention that I was about to graduate summa cum laude from a top university. No photos of my empty chair at holiday gatherings. It was as if I had been erased from the family. After graduation, my friend Andrea had an idea. "Let's rent an apartment together in Fresno. The tech scene is booming there. We could both get good jobs." Going back to South Dakota hadn't even crossed my mind. I got a job at a medium-sized marketing company, starting in an entry-level position. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to cover my half of the rent in our small 3-bedroom apartment. I worked hard, staying late, learning new skills, and volunteering for tough projects. Soon, I was earning enough to afford my own place, a tiny studio apartment, but it was mine. Every inch of it paid for by my own hard work. After 4 years, I realized I had reached a limit. No matter how hard I worked, the company's structure meant I would have to wait years for a real promotion. One evening, while updating my LinkedIn profile, I got a message from a recruiter at Tech Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Fresno. "Your profile caught my attention," she wrote. "Would you be interested in discussing an opportunity with us?" The interview process was tough. 5 rounds of meetings, a presentation, and a strategy proposal. But at 28, I was ready for the challenge. When the offer came, I could hardly believe it. My new salary was nearly double what I was making, plus stock options and bonuses that made my head spin. My career took off. Within 3 years, I was leading my own team. My smart investments paid off, and soon, I walked into a Mercedes dealership and signed papers for a car I had only dreamed of in college. A few months later, I was approved for a mortgage on a beautiful 3-bedroom apartment in one of Fresno's best neighborhoods. Life was good, peaceful, until my phone rang one November evening. "Erica." My mother's voice sounded different, almost hesitant. "How are you?" I almost dropped my wine glass. We hadn't talked beyond short holiday messages in years. "I'm fine," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Is everything okay?" Yes. We haven't seen you in so long. Would you come home for Christmas this year?" For weeks later, I pulled up to my parents' house in my new Mercedes. Inside, I saw that some things hadn't changed. Sydney, now 25 and a fresh college graduate, was still living at home. She sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone while Mom fussed over the dinner table and Dad pretended to be busy with his newspaper. "Erica." Mom hugged me awkwardly. "We've missed you so much." Dad nodded from behind his paper. "You look well." Dinner was awkward, forced politeness, small talk, and long silences. Sydney barely spoke, but I noticed her watching me throughout the meal. Finally, she broke the silence. "You've gained weight," she said with that same old smirk. "I guess making all that money means you can eat whatever you want now," Sydney said, smirking. I looked at her, then at my plate of Mom's Christmas roast, and smiled. "Actually, I just have a peaceful life now." It's amazing how good life can be when no one is around to bother you. The silence that followed was sweeter than any Christmas dessert. After dinner, Mom asked me to stay behind while Dad and Sydney cleared the table. She led me to the old living room sofa, the same one where they once told me my college fund wasn't really mine. "Erica, honey," she began, her voice soft, like when I was a child, when she wanted something. "I need to talk to you about something important." She looked older than I remembered, tired. Her hands nervously played with the edge of her sweater. "Your father retired last spring," she said. "His health isn't great anymore, and his medication costs are, well, they're more than we expected. I had to cut back to part-time at work to take care of him." I sat quietly, waiting for her to continue. "The house needs work too," she added, pointing at the water stains on the ceiling. "The roof leaks, the furnace is old, and we can barely afford basic repairs. We're struggling, Erica." Then came the words I knew were coming. "We've seen how well you're doing. That beautiful car outside. Your success. We're so proud of you. We were wondering if maybe you could help us out a little." I looked around at the house where I had grown up. The fading wallpaper, the worn carpet. Despite everything, I couldn't stand the thought of my parents struggling. "I'll send you $2,000 a month," I heard myself say. Mom's eyes lit up. She threw her arms around me, hugging me for the second time that night. "Oh, Erica, thank you, sweetheart. This means so much to us." True to my word, I set up the monthly transfers as soon as I got back to Fresno. Like clockwork, $2,000 went to my parents' account every month. I told myself it was for Dad's medical bills and house repairs. I didn't ask for receipts or proof. I was too busy with work to worry about how they spent it. But every now and then, when I had a rare free moment, I would check Sydney's Facebook page. There she was at a fancy new fusion restaurant, posting pictures of expensive sushi platters. Another post showed shopping bags from designer boutiques. She posed in new outfits in every photo, expensive ones, judging by the brand names. All this while still living at home with our struggling parents. Maybe she got a job? I wondered about it, but her post didn't make sense. Lunch at fancy cafes on Sunday afternoons. shopping sprees on Saturday mornings, spa days on Thursdays. If she had a job, when did she work? But I was too busy with my own life to think about it too much. My team was growing, we had big projects launching, and I was up for another promotion. Then the call came, right in the middle of an important meeting. Mom never called during work hours. Our only contact for the past year had been through the monthly bank transfer notifications. I stepped out of the conference room. "Erica, we need your help," Mom said immediately, skipping any greetings. Her voice sounded urgent, more serious than I had heard since I was a child. "We need $100,000. It's an emergency." "Mom, wait." But she had already hung up. I stared at my phone, confused and afraid. My first thought was Dad. His health had been getting worse. That's why I had been sending money home every month. Was he in the hospital? Did he need emergency surgery? I remembered how weak he had looked at Christmas. The medical system was expensive. One bad illness could ruin a family financially. I rushed back into the meeting room, grabbed my things. "I'm sorry, everyone. I have a family emergency." I handed things over to my teammate Morgan, canceled all my meetings for the week, and booked the first flight to South Dakota. The entire trip, my mind raced with worst-case scenarios: Dad in the ICU, life-saving procedures they couldn't afford, impossible choices they had to make. I had read the headlines about families going bankrupt because of medical bills. Was this happening to my family? I rented a car and followed the GPS to my parents' house, 30 minutes away. Then I noticed something strange. All the lights in the house were on. I could see it from the end of the street. That wasn't what I expected in a medical emergency. Usually, in a crisis, people forget to turn on lights. I barely had time to knock before Mom opened the door. Her face fell when she saw me, like I was a salesperson at the door, not her daughter who had just flown across the country for an emergency. "Erica, what are you doing here?" Behind her, I saw Dad sitting in his chair, looking completely fine, reading a magazine. Sydney was in the living room, pacing back and forth, typing furiously on her phone. "You didn't have to come," Mom said, hesitating before letting me in. "We just needed you to send the money." The house smelled like coffee and pastries, not the air of a family in crisis. I looked around, confused. Then my eyes landed on the bridal magazines scattered across the coffee table. What was really going on? At first, I didn't notice. "Dad, are you okay?" I asked. "He's fine," Mom said quickly, throwing Sydney a warning look. "Everyone's fine. You really didn't need to come all this way." That's when Sydney stepped forward, practically bouncing with excitement. She held out her left hand, and a massive diamond ring sparkled in the light. It had to be at least 2 carats, way more than her fiancé could afford on his entry-level salary. "I'm getting married," she squealed. "And we need the money for the wedding. $100,000 should cover the basics." I stood there, completely stunned, my carry-on bag still in my hand. The emergency that made me cancel work, book a last-minute flight, and worry myself sick was a wedding? "Well, we need to book the venue soon," Mom said, as if this made perfect sense. She sat on the couch, smoothing her skirt like we were just discussing weekend plans. $100,000 isn't much for a wedding these days. It's really quite modest when you think about it. Sydney nodded, still admiring her ring. "I actually wanted a $200,000 wedding," she said, "but I thought about you, sis. I cut everything in half to make it easier for you. You should be thanking me, really. I mean, $100,000 isn't a lot for you anymore." I looked at my sister's smug face, at my mother's expectant expression, and something inside me finally snapped. "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I won't give you a penny for this wedding." The silence was deafening. "What?" Sydney whispered, her face shifting from shock to rage. "You heard me. I won't pay for a wedding for someone who has made my life miserable since we were kids. Someone who lied about me, stole from me, and got me punished for things I didn't do. Someone whose tricks cost me my summer camp, my phone privileges, and so much more." I turned to my parents. "And you always took her side. You always believed her lies over my truth. How dare you?" Mom jumped up from the couch. After everything we've done for you, she shouted. I laughed. Everything you've done for me?
Fine.
Let's talk about what you've actually done with my money. Show me the receipts. What receipts? Dad finally spoke. The medical bills I've been paying for. The house repairs you said you needed. Show me where my $320,000 went over the past year. The room went completely silent. Mom and Dad exchanged nervous glances. We used it for necessary things, Mom stammered. Necessary things? I repeated. Like Sydney's shopping sprees? Her expensive restaurant visits? Her designer clothes? I pulled out my phone and opened Sydney's Facebook page. Funny how someone living with our struggling parents can afford Gucci bags and weekly spa visits. Sydney's face turned red. You've been stalking me. No, I said calmly. I've just been watching you show off my money all over social media. You selfish jerk. Sydney screamed, tears running down her face. You have everything, a fancy job, a nice car, a beautiful apartment. Why can't you share? We raised you better than this. Dad stepped in. You've become a greedy, heartless person. I felt calm, calmer than I had ever felt before. Heartless. I repeated.
No.
What's heartless is tricking your daughter into giving you money. What's heartless is spending her college fund on your favorite child. What's heartless is lying about medical bills to fund Sydney's shopping and vacations. I picked up my bag. I'm done. The monthly payment stopped today. Don't call me. Don't message me. Don't ask me for anything ever again. You can't do this to us. Sydney was in full hysterics now, mascara running down her face. I've already told everyone about my dream wedding. I walked to the door and turned back one last time. That sounds like a you problem. The calls and messages started before I even reached my rental car. By the time I got to my hotel, my phone was flooded. Texts calling me selfish and ungrateful. Voicemails from Mom, crying about family obligations. Messages from Sydney, threatening to tell everyone what a terrible person I was.
Fine.
Let everyone know. I sat down at my laptop and started typing. An open letter about family, money, and the truth. I explained everything, the childhood manipulation, the stolen college fund, the recent financial lies. I attached screenshots of Sydney's luxury shopping and fancy dinners, all posted during the months I was sending money for medical bills. I ended the letter with their demand for a $100,000 wedding. The post went viral within our extended family. Aunt Lauren called it disgraceful behavior. Cousin Sam said he had never seen such manipulation. Uncle Owen, always the family peacemaker, canceled his RSVP to Sydney's wedding. 4 months later, my cousin John gave me an update. Sydney's dream wedding? A quiet dinner at Olive Garden with her husband's family and our parents. No designer dress. No fancy venue. No elaborate flowers. Just breadsticks and a limited menu. I smiled when I heard the news, but I didn't feel any satisfaction. I was too busy living my own life. My team at work had just finished a successful project launch. I had started dating Kevin, a kind software engineer who respected my boundaries about family. My therapist said I was making excellent progress. Sometimes late at night, I still see message requests from my family. I delete them without reading. The little girl who once desperately wanted her parents' approval is gone. In her place is a woman who finally understands. Real family isn't about blood. It's about shared values. A love that turned to pain. The sharp sound of the slap echoed through the silent room, cutting through the air like a blade. My cheek stung with a fiery pain, but it was nothing compared to the humiliation surging through me. My heart pounded as I stared at him, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. Larry, my fiancé, the man I had trusted with my whole heart, had just struck me. His eyes burned with anger, his chest rising and falling rapidly, as if he were holding back words he wanted to scream. But he didn't say a thing. Instead, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I stood frozen, my hands trembling as I touched my burning face. Tears welled up in my eyes, not just from the physical pain but from the deeper wound his actions had left in my soul. This wasn't just a single moment of rage. It was a betrayal, a breaking point. And in that instant, I knew everything had changed forever. My name is Elizabeth Banks, and I am 26 years old. For the past 7 years, I had been in a relationship with Larry Martinez, the man I once believed was my soulmate. We met when I was just 19, and from the beginning, he made me feel special, like I was the center of his universe. When he proposed in June 2024, I was overwhelmed with happiness, convinced that we were destined to spend our lives together. Our wedding was planned for August 2025, a sentimental date marking the anniversary of the day we first met. I had spent years dreaming of this moment, believing that my life was falling perfectly into place. Little did I know I was headed straight for heartbreak, the beginning of the cracks. The excitement of wedding planning consumed me. By October 2024, I had dived headfirst into organizing every little detail, the color scheme, the flowers, the music. I envisioned a breathtaking ceremony with a delicate light blue and white theme, a picture-perfect spring wedding. I spent hours scrolling through Pinterest, curating mood boards, and sending Larry my ideas. His responses? Always the same, short, dismissive, uninterested. "Looks good," he'd say. Or worse, he'd just send a simple thumbs-up emoji. At first, I convinced myself he was just busy with work. I told myself that maybe he trusted me so much that he wanted me to have full creative control over our special day. But deep down, I felt a nagging worry when I tried to ignore. His lack of enthusiasm wasn't just about the wedding. It was about us. And it wasn't the only sign that something was wrong. The other woman in our relationship, Larry's mother, Kathleen Martinez, had always been a dominant presence in our relationship. At first, I admired their closeness. I thought it was sweet how much he valued family. But as time passed, I realized it was more than just a strong bond. It was control. Kathleen was involved in every aspect of his life, and, by extension, our life. She called him multiple times a day, giving him advice on everything from what he should eat for lunch to what kind of car he should buy. But what hurt the most was that Larry always listened to her over me. Every decision that should have been ours as a couple, where we'd live, how we'd spend holidays, even small choices like picking out furniture, was run through her first. I became the outsider in my own relationship, the third wheel in what should have been a partnership between two people in love. I should have seen the warning signs. But love makes you blind. The breaking point. Looking back, I don't know exactly when Larry started changing. Maybe he had always been that way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. Maybe it was the stress of the wedding, or maybe it was something deeper. His temper started surfacing in small ways, an irritated sigh when I asked him for his opinion, a cold stare when I brought up wedding plans. Then came the sharp words, the cutting remarks, the way he dismissed my feelings like they were nothing. And then the slap. That single moment shattered every illusion I had about our love. It was like the final piece of the puzzle falling into place, revealing an ugly truth I had refused to see. The man I loved, the man I thought would be my husband, was not who I believed him to be. As I stood in that silent room, my cheek burning and my heart breaking, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't love, and I could never marry him. His mother always came first. I felt like I was always competing with his mother for his attention. But I kept telling myself that things would get better. I believed that once we got married, he would finally put our relationship first. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 weeks ago, I had a day I had been dreaming about for years. Wedding dress shopping with my mom and sister. It was supposed to be a magical experience, something I would cherish forever. We visited several bridal shops, trying on dress after dress, searching for the one. And then I found it. It was the most beautiful gown, elegant and classic. The moment I saw myself in the mirror, I felt like a princess. Tears filled my eyes as I imagined walking down the aisle. My mom and sister were just as emotional, their faces full of joy and admiration. It was everything I had ever hoped for. Excited, I snapped a picture and sent it to Larry, eager to share the moment with him. A few minutes later, he replied, "It looks beautiful." For a brief moment, I felt truly happy. What I didn't know was that, right after he saw my message, Larry showed the picture to his mother. And that one simple action turned my perfect day into a nightmare. The nightmare begins. Kathleen, my future mother-in-law, was furious. She called me multiple times while I was still out shopping, but I didn't answer. I figured it could wait. I had no idea what was coming. Later that evening, I walked into our house feeling overjoyed and full of hope. But that feeling disappeared the second I stepped inside. Kathleen was already there. She had let herself in using the spare key we had given her for emergencies. She was sitting on our couch, her arms crossed, her face twisted with anger. The happiness I had felt just minutes before vanished. As soon as I walked in, she jumped to her feet and shouted, "You lied to me." I stood there confused.
What was she talking about?
She glared at me and said that I had promised her years ago that I would wear her old wedding dress. A dress that, to be honest, looked like it belonged in a museum. I was stunned. I had no memory of ever making such a promise. Maybe I had made a polite comment about it a long time ago, just to be nice. But even if I had, it wasn't some kind of binding agreement. Kathleen didn't care. She called me a liar, saying I didn't deserve to marry her son. Her words cut deep. I kept looking around, hoping Larry would walk in and stand up for me. But he was nowhere to be found. I tried to explain. I tried to reason with her. But she wouldn't listen. Her voice got louder, her words harsher. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. Feeling alone in my own relationship, I walked to my room, my heart heavy with humiliation and defeat. Even with the door shut, I could still hear Kathleen's angry voice echoing through the house. It felt like an eternity before I finally heard the front door slam shut. A few moments later, Larry walked into our room. He looked at me like nothing had happened, like he had been completely unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded. "Why is my mom so upset?" he asked, as if he hadn't heard her yelling from wherever he had been hiding. A wave of frustration and disbelief washed over me. Was he serious?
Did he really not know?
I took a deep breath and explained everything, hoping he would finally take my side, comfort me, support me, stand up for me. But instead, he sighed and started defending her. Larry said that years ago, when we first started dating, I had admired his mother's wedding dress and mentioned that I'd love to wear it. Maybe I had said something polite at the time to be nice, but there was no way I had actually promised to wear it on my wedding day. Still, Larry insisted that I was the one being unreasonable. He said his mother had every right to feel hurt. That night, I went to bed feeling more alone than ever. My heart was heavy with disappointment. I lay there in the dark, replaying everything in my mind. How had it come to this? How had the man I loved for 7 years chosen his mother's feelings over mine again? I tossed and turned, feeling a deep, painful realization settle in my chest. I thought about all the times I had put his family's needs before mine, all the sacrifices I had made. And for what?
To be treated like a liar.
To be made to feel like an outsider in my own relationship. A morning of heartbreak. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages from Kathleen. Each one felt like a knife to my heart. She called me selfish, ungrateful. She told me I wasn't worthy of marrying her precious son. Tears filled my eyes as I read through her hateful words. How could she do this? How could someone I had tried so hard to please turn on me so quickly? I showed the messages to Larry, hoping, begging really, that he would finally see how cruel his mother was being. That he would finally stand up for me. But he just shrugged. "She's probably just hurt that you don't want to wear her dress," he said casually. "Just give her some time to calm down." I stared at him in shock. Did he really not see what was happening? Kathleen wasn't just hurt. She was trying to ruin our engagement. She wanted to make me look like the bad guy. I felt anger bubble up inside me. This wasn't about a dress anymore.
It was about respect.
It was about support. It was about having a partner who would stand up for me. And it was painfully clear now, Larry was not that partner. I tried one last time to make him understand. I told him, "This is our wedding." But deep down, I already knew the truth. It would never truly be ours. The moment everything fell apart. I should have felt beautiful and confident in the dress I chose. After all, it was my wedding. To make peace, I even suggested compromises, wearing a piece of Kathleen's jewelry or using fabric from her dress in my veil. But none of it was good enough. Larry refused to budge. He insisted that I either wore the entire dress or I was ungrateful. To him and his mother, it was all or nothing. And I was starting to feel like I had no place in this wedding at all. A battle I couldn't win. The days that followed were filled with tension and endless arguments. Kathleen continued her mission to turn people against me. She sent me cruel messages, spreading lies about me, and even reached out to some of my friends to turn them against me. And Larry? He did nothing to stop her. If anything, he seemed to agree with her more and more. He made me feel like I was the problem. Like I was the unreasonable one for wanting to wear my own dress at my own wedding. I felt like I was losing my mind. The final conversation. Then came the moment that changed everything. The tension between Larry and me had reached a breaking point. I knew we needed to have a serious conversation, one that would decide if our relationship was even worth saving. That evening, I waited for him to come home. When he walked in, I was ready. We sat in the living room, and I poured my heart out. I told him how hurt I was, how unsupported I felt, how his mother's constant interference was tearing us apart. "This is supposed to be our wedding," I said. "Not a chance for your mother to relive her past." But instead of listening, Larry got defensive. "You're overreacting," he snapped. "This is about family. The wedding isn't just for us. It's for them too." His words felt like a slap in the face. At that moment, I realized just how deep his loyalty to his mother ran. I took a shaky breath and asked, "Larry, are you marrying me or your mother? Because it feels like you're more committed to her than to us." That question set him off. His face twisted in anger. He started shouting, accusing me of being selfish, of making a big deal out of nothing. I felt my heart breaking all over again. I looked at him and said the words I never thought I would. "I'm seriously reconsidering this engagement. I can't marry someone who won't stand up for me." Instead of hearing me out, he rolled his eyes and dismissed me, like I was throwing a tantrum. His indifference hurt more than I could describe. I turned to walk away, hoping to end the argument before it got worse. But then it did. Larry grabbed my arm, spun me around, and slapped me across the face. The impact was shocking. My cheek burned from the sting, but the real pain came from what it meant. The man I loved had just hit me. And in that moment I knew this wasn't love anymore. Choosing myself over him. I couldn't believe it. He had actually hit me. The man I thought I would spend my life with, the man I had loved for 7 years, had resorted to violence. Tears filled my eyes as I stood there, frozen in shock. My cheek burned, but the real pain was inside me. Larry stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him, running straight back to his mother's side. Again, I felt numb. The slap itself didn't hurt as much as the emotional betrayal. This was the final line he had crossed, and there was no going back. Walking away for good. I knew I had to protect myself. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and called my sister, Janet. She came over immediately. The moment she saw the red mark on my cheek, her eyes filled with anger and concern. She pulled me into a tight hug, holding me like she could shield me from all the pain. "You're coming with me," she said firmly. I didn't argue. Together, we packed a bag. I knew I couldn't stay in that house another second. My relationship with Larry was over, and I had to make sure he never hurt me again. As we walked out the door, I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. A part of me still ached for what I thought we had. But deep down, I knew I was doing the right thing, taking back my power. The next morning, I woke up with clarity. I knew what had to be done. With Janet by my side, I went to the police station and filed for a restraining order against Larry. I provided photos of the red mark on my cheek. I showed the toxic messages from Kathleen, proof of the mental and emotional torment I had endured for so long. The process felt both empowering and heartbreaking. It was surreal, standing there, taking legal action against someone I had once loved with all my heart. But I had no choice. I had to protect myself. Once the paperwork was filed, I made the difficult but necessary calls to cancel the wedding, turning pain into strength. The first call was to the venue. I braced myself for the worst, but to my surprise, they were understanding and kind. They allowed me to transfer the deposit to another event. I decided to use it for something better, an early birthday party. Something to celebrate my freedom and strength instead of mourning a relationship that was never meant to be. The caterer, however, wasn't as understanding. I lost part of the money, but at that point I didn't even care. All that mattered was that I was finally free, letting go of the past. And then there was the engagement ring, a symbol that had once meant forever. Now it just felt like a burden. Larry refused to take it back, claiming it was a gift. But I didn't want it. I wasn't his anymore. And I was never looking back, turning pain into something good. I decided to sell the engagement ring and donate the money to a domestic violence shelter. It was a small way to turn something painful into something meaningful. It gave me a sense of closure, knowing that something that once symbolized heartbreak could now help others in need. But even with the restraining order, Kathleen wasn't done. She went on a smear campaign, using social media to spread lies about me. She called me a selfish, ungrateful bride who had broken her son's heart. She even reached out to some of my family members, hoping to turn them against me. But my family and true friends saw through her manipulations. They stood firmly by my side. It was comforting to know that I had people who believed in me and supported my decision. Larry's desperation. Larry, on the other hand, was a mess. One moment, he was begging for forgiveness. The next, he was blaming me for everything. One evening, he even showed up unannounced at my new apartment. Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded for me to take him back. Seeing him, the man I had once loved, now standing before me as a stranger, made my skin crawl. I had to threaten to call the police before he finally left. And that moment only made my resolve stronger. There was no turning back. Finding strength in my support system. To move forward, I leaned on the people who truly cared about me. My parents, who had been furious when they learned what had happened, helped me move the last of my things out of the apartment I had shared with Larry. They also offered to cover any legal fees I might need, reminding me that I was not alone. Some of my friends were incredibly supportive, always checking in on me and making sure I was okay. But not everyone understood. A few people questioned why I hadn't just worn the dress to keep the peace. Those friendships became strained, but in the end, I realized it was for the best. This experience had shown me who my true friends were. Rebuilding my life. As the weeks passed, I slowly started to rebuild my life. The early birthday party I had planned at what would have been our wedding venue turned out to be a beautiful celebration. I was surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported me. I laughed. I danced. And for the first time in years, I felt light and free. The joy in that room wasn't just about the party. It was a reminder of my strength and the freedom I had fought for. That day wasn't about the pain that led up to it. It was about the healing and happiness that followed. Turning a honeymoon into an adventure. Instead of letting the honeymoon trip go to waste, Janet and I decided to go together. We flew to London, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. What was supposed to be a romantic escape turned into an unforgettable sister adventure. We walked through the charming streets, ate delicious Italian food, and had deep conversations that made me feel whole again. It wasn't the honeymoon I had once imagined, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. A different kind of love story. The trip wasn't what I had once imagined, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. A journey that celebrated love and resilience in a new, but equally meaningful way. When I got back home, I focused on healing. I started therapy, where I worked through the emotional scars left by my relationship with Larry. It was hard to face the truth, the red flags I had ignored, the compromises I had made, and the self-worth I had lost along the way. But each session helped me understand myself better. I learned to trust my instincts, to set boundaries, and to recognize that I deserved respect and love, things I would never settle for less than again. letting go for good. Over time, Larry and Kathleen faded into the background of my life. Once the restraining order and our mutual no-contact agreement were finalized, Larry's desperate attempts to win me back finally stopped. Kathleen's smear campaign also lost steam. People saw the truth, and her lies no longer mattered. Then, something unexpected happened. Larry's father reached out to me privately. He apologized for everything, admitting that he understood my decision and wished me well. It was a small gesture, but it meant more than I could have imagined. Surrounded by real love. Through it all, my family remained my rock. My parents, who had been furious about the slap and everything I had endured, never wavered in their support. My true friends stood by me, showing up in ways that I will always be grateful for. Of course, some people didn't understand why I had taken such a strong stand. Those friendships faded away, but I realized that was part of the healing process. I had learned to surround myself only with people who lifted me up, reclaiming my power. The engagement ring, once a symbol of hope and a future, had become a painful reminder of what I had survived. Selling it and donating the money to a domestic violence shelter was one of the most empowering things I had ever done. It felt like a way to take back my power, to turn my pain into something that could help others. No regrets, only lessons. People often ask me if I regret anything. The truth? I don't. As painful as this experience was, it taught me some of the most important lessons of my life. I learned to trust myself. I learned to never settle for less than I deserve. I learned that my happiness and well-being come first. I'm not ready to date again yet, but I know that when I am, I will enter relationships with a clearer understanding of what I want and need. I'll never ignore red flags again. I'll always prioritize respect and partnership over anything else. Rediscovering myself. For now, I'm just focusing on me. I've started picking up hobbies I once put on hold. I'm spending more time with friends and family. I'm rediscovering who I am outside of a relationship. And for the first time in a long time, I feel free. A new beginning. I am stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I ever thought I could be. And for the first time in a long time, I feel genuinely hopeful about the future. Thank you for being part of this emotional journey with me. If this story touched you, made you think, or kept you engaged until the end, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please consider liking this video to show your support, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more powerful stories. Your comments mean so much to me, so feel free to share your reactions, favorite moments, or any feedback you have. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are stronger than you think. What do you mean Patrick will be the CEO? I'm the one who saved this hotel. My voice echoed through the newly renovated lobby, bouncing off the mountain-style decorations I had spent months perfecting. Mom waved her hand like it was nothing. Emma, honey, your brother is a natural leader. You focus too much on details, she said, like she was talking to a child. That's when Patrick walked in, hands in his pockets, with that smug smile he'd had since we were kids. Hey, sis, don't take it personally. Someone has to handle the daily work while I focus on the big picture. My name is Emma Roberts. I'm 53 years old, and I never thought I'd have to fight for respect in my own family's business. After 22 successful years in hotel management in New York, I gave everything up to come back home to Florida and save our struggling family hotel. The funny thing? I was the only one with real experience in the hotel industry. My younger brother Patrick had jumped from job to job, never staying anywhere for more than a year. 10 months ago, my dad called me in tears. The hotel was weeks away from going bankrupt. I didn't think twice. I sold my condo in New York, emptied my savings, and came home to help. The place was a mess. The decor was outdated, there was no social media presence, and the online reviews were terrible. I worked day and night, upgrading everything, new booking systems, fresh furniture, better staff training. I spent countless nights bent over spreadsheets, negotiating with suppliers. I even used my connections to get us featured in travel magazines. And it worked. The Traveler's Rest Lodge went from a rundown, 4-star hotel to the most popular spot in town. Our bookings doubled, and for the first time in years, we were making a profit. Every detail, from the locally made artwork to the improved guest services, was chosen carefully to create the best experience possible. But now, as I stood there watching Patrick smirk while our parents handed him everything, I couldn't believe it. I did all the work, and he was getting all the credit. I built this. But I realize now, it doesn't matter to them. The worst part? They're announcing Patrick's promotion at tonight's staff meeting. The same meeting where I was supposed to share our record-breaking quarterly results. I can feel the staff watching me, especially Pamela, our head housekeeper, who has been here for 22 years. They all know who really turned this place around. But like me, they have to stand here and pretend this is normal, like this is fair. Let me take you back so you understand how we got here. The Travelers Rest Lodge has been in our family since my grandparents built it in 1968. I basically grew up here, learning every part of the business. While other kids played pretend, I was helping Mom with check-ins and watching Dad handle maintenance. The hotel was my second home, and I loved every minute of it. But Patrick? He was different. For years younger than me, he never cared about the hotel. While I was in college studying hospitality, he kept changing majors, first architecture, then business, before dropping out completely to find himself. Mom and Dad never seemed to mind. He's just creative, they'd say. He needs time to figure things out. Meanwhile, I was working my way up in New York, from front desk manager to regional director at a major hotel chain. But no matter what I achieved, my family barely reacted. That's nice, dear, they'd say. But when are you coming home? When are you getting married? It was never enough. Then Dad called, telling me the hotel was weeks away from going broke. I knew exactly what needed to be done. The place was losing money fast. The systems were outdated, the operations were a mess, and they had no real marketing. Online reviews were brutal. Stuck in the past. Needs major updates. Not worth the price. It broke my heart to see my family's legacy fall apart. I took a leave of absence from my job in New York, one that turned into quitting for good, and threw myself into saving the hotel. The first month was just cleaning up the mess, fixing broken equipment, updating the booking system, and training staff on customer service. I even used my own savings to replace the old carpet and give the lobby a much-needed upgrade. Every penny, every ounce of effort, I gave it all. And now, Patrick gets to take the credit. Every dollar I spent was planned carefully to make sure we got the best results. What really bothers me, Patrick wasn't even here for any of it. He was off in Miami supposedly networking, but really just partying with his friends. He'd show up for the occasional family dinner, throw out some vague ideas about modernizing the hotel, and then disappear again. Yet somehow, in my parents' eyes, his random comments were just as valuable as all the hard work I did every single day. I kept telling myself it would all be worth it. That once they saw the results, the better ratings, the increased bookings, the glowing reviews, they'd finally see my value. I should have known better. The past 4 weeks have been a nightmare. Patrick walks around like he owns the place, making changes without understanding how a hotel actually works. Just yesterday, he decided to cut our free breakfast service to save money, not realizing it's one of our biggest selling points. When I tried to show him guest feedback proving how much people love our breakfast, he just laughed and said, "Numbers aren't everything, sis." But what really pushed me over the edge happened this morning. I walked in and found him firing Samantha, our head housekeeper, who's been with us for 16 years. His reason? She wasn't flexible enough with his new scheduling system, a system that would have left us short-staffed during our busiest hours. I managed to step in and save her job, but the embarrassed look on her face will stay with me for a long time. I tried talking to Mom and Dad about it. I showed them spreadsheets, guest reviews praising our improvements, even financial predictions for the next few months. Dad just stared at his coffee. Mom patted my hand and said, "Dear, you need to give your brother time to find his footing. He has such wonderful ideas." That's when I saw it. Driving home, I passed the old The Gales Hotel and Spa. It had been our biggest competitor for years before it fell apart last season. There was a "for sale" sign in front. I pulled into the parking lot, my mind racing. This place had so much potential. Better views than our hotel, closer to the ski slopes, and a bigger spa area. Sure, it needed work, but I knew exactly what to do with it. I sat in my car for almost an hour, thinking about every time my parents had overlooked me in favor of Patrick. Every achievement ignored. Every idea dismissed. Every bit of hard work taken for granted. Something inside me snapped, or maybe for the first time, everything became clear. Right there in the parking lot, I called my realtor. The owners were eager to sell. And thanks to my savings and strong credit, I was ready to make my move. I knew I could make it happen. By the time I got home, I had already scheduled a tour of the property for the next morning. For the first time in months, I felt excited. I didn't have to stand by and watch Patrick ruin everything I had built. Instead, I would build something new, something that was completely mine. Let them see what they lost when they chose him over me. The next few months were a blur of hard work. While Patrick was busy throwing parties at Travelers Rest Lodge, I was meeting with contractors, redesigning spaces, and hiring the best hospitality team I could find. I named my hotel The Summit. Maybe it was a little obvious, but I wanted people to know exactly what I was aiming for, something at the top. Word spread fast. Some people said I was being petty for competing with my own family. But others, especially former Mountain Pine employees, quietly supported me. At first, my parents tried to make me feel guilty. How could you do this to your brother? To us? Mom asked during one of our rare family dinners. I just smiled and changed the subject. Meanwhile, Patrick's bad management was starting to show. Travelers Rest Lodge's reviews were dropping. Guests complained about poor service, broken equipment, and even dirty rooms. Within the first month, for long-time employees quit. I heard they had to lower their room rates just to keep guests coming. Then came the Summit's grand opening, exactly 7 months after that awful day in the lobby. I'll never forget my family's faces when they walked in. Mom's forced smile barely hid her shock. Dad's eyes widened as he looked around at the packed lobby. And Patrick? He was furious. The local newspaper was there, taking photos and interviewing guests about Aspen Dental, Miami, Florida's newest luxury destination. Patrick pulled me aside near the bar, his voice low and angry. You're trying to destroy us. I just smiled. No, Patrick. This is me succeeding despite our family. The difference between our hotels couldn't have been clearer. While Travelers Rest Lodge struggled with basic upkeep, the Summit was making headlines for its eco-friendly features and high-end amenities. Everything I had wanted to do at Mountain Pine but was shut down for? It was now a reality here. Locally sourced food, a state-of-the-art spa, and a guest experience designed to be unforgettable. This time, no one could take it away from me. I had built exactly what I imagined. But success came with its own problems. Other hotels started copying our booking system. Some people in town, old friends of my parents, started whispering that I was tearing the family apart. Even some loyal guests from Travelers Rest Lodge felt guilty about choosing my hotel over theirs. The real challenges started as the Summit became more popular. Vendors I had worked with at Travelers Rest Lodge suddenly got pressured not to do business with me. My mom had a strong social circle in town, and suddenly some longtime family friends stopped meeting me for coffee. I even lost my seat on the local tourism board. Apparently, it was now a conflict of interest. But I wasn't going to let small-town politics ruin what I had built. When local vendors hesitated, I found better ones in Miami. When the tourism board shut me out, I focused on building direct relationships with ski tour operators. Every challenge only made me work harder and think smarter. Then came the biggest test of all. Mom and Dad showed up at my office one morning looking worried. The bank was threatening to take Travelers Rest Lodge. Patrick's mismanagement had finally caught up with them. They wanted me to come back. Not as CEO, of course. Just to help Patrick learn how to run the hotel. We're family, Mom pleaded. You can't just let the hotel fail. I looked at them, sitting across from me in the office I had built from scratch, and felt strangely calm. I offered to help 10 months ago, I said. You chose Patrick. Now you have to live with that choice. Dad tried another approach. Think about your grandfather's legacy, he said quietly. This hotel has been in our family for generations. I did try to protect that legacy, I shot back. You're the ones who handed it over to someone who treats it like his personal playground. After that, the rumors got worse. People called me the ungrateful daughter, the bitter sister, the woman who turned against her own family out of spite. Some days, the gossip hurt more than I wanted to admit. But every morning, I walked into the summit's lobby, saw my vision come to life, and knew I had made the right choice. My team became my new family. Many were former Mountain Pine employees who had left, fed up with Patrick's careless leadership. They understood what I was building wasn't about revenge. It was about creating something real, something we could all be proud of. The breaking point came at the annual Florida Luxury Hotels Awards. The summit was nominated for Best New Boutique Hotel. Travelers Rest Lodge? It wasn't nominated for anything. I was sitting in the ballroom, surrounded by my team, when they announced our win. As I walked up to the stage, I spotted my parents in the back of the room. They had shown up without telling me, probably expecting to support our family hotel like they always had. But the look on their faces said it all.
Mom was trying not to cry.
Dad looked like he had aged 12 years. Patrick wasn't there. He had stopped coming to industry events months ago, saying they were just popularity contests. But everyone in that room knew the truth. The student had passed the teacher. The detail-obsessed daughter had built something even better than the family business they refused to trust her with. During my speech, I thanked my team, our guests, and even mentioned Travelers Rest Lodge, the place where I first fell in love with hospitality. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They caught the message behind my words. But what happened after my speech changed everything. A well-known travel magazine editor approached me for an interview. As we talked about the summit's success, I noticed my parents standing nearby, listening. They heard every word. I talked about my journey, how being passed over for CEO had pushed me to build something of my own. Sometimes the best success stories come from being underestimated, I said, loud enough for them to hear. That night, the editor told me they were naming the summit the best boutique hotel in the Rockies in their next issue. The same issue would also feature an article about struggling hotels, using Travelers Rest Lodge as the main example. When the magazine came out, it was like an earthquake in our small town. The people who had whispered that I was just being petty had to face the truth. I hadn't hurt Travelers Rest Lodge. Their own bad choices had. Looking back, I feel a mix of emotions. Part of me still aches from how my parents treated me, how they dismissed everything I did like it didn't matter. But another part of me, the bigger part, feels free. I'm living life on my own terms. I don't need anyone's approval. Every morning, when I walk into the summit, I see what I built with my own hands. The lobby is full of energy, guests chatting about their plans, staff moving smoothly with warm smiles. The smell of fresh coffee fills the air, mixing with the crisp mountain breeze that rushes in when the doors open. It's everything I dreamed of. The summit is everything I ever wanted Travelers Rest Lodge to be. Seeing it succeed fills me with pride. My team at the summit feels like family in ways I never expected. Many of them, like Pamela and Carolyn, used to work at my parents' hotel, but left because they saw the same lack of leadership I did. They've played a huge role in making the summit a success, and their loyalty humbles me. Pamela often jokes that, for the first time, her experience and ideas actually matter. I know exactly how she feels. Outside of work, I've started reconnecting with old friends. For years, I was so focused on proving myself to my parents that I let important relationships fade. Now, I make time for coffee dates and hikes, rebuilding those connections. Even some of the people who first criticized me for competing with my family have changed their minds. They've told me they respect what I've accomplished. I'm also finding my place in the community again. Hosting events at the summit has helped me reconnect with old friends and make new ones. Just last month, we held a fundraiser for the local animal shelter in our new event space. It was a huge success. Watching people come together for a good cause reminded me why I fell in love with hospitality in the first place, to create spaces where people feel happy and welcome. But it's not all perfect. There are quiet moments when I think about my parents and Patrick. As much as they hurt me, I still wish things could be different. Sometimes I wonder if they truly understand the sacrifices I made to save our family's hotel. Still, I've come to realize that I don't need their approval. My success, my happiness, they belong to me, and no one can take them away. For so long, I lived under their expectations. But now, I finally stand in my own light. Then, about 4 weeks after the Florida Luxury Hotels Awards, my parents reached out. They asked me to come over for dinner, just the three of us. I hesitated. I wasn't expecting an apology, but I was curious about what they had to say. When I arrived, something felt different. Mom greeted me with a nervous smile. Dad wouldn't make eye contact, fiddling with his watch like he always did when he was uncomfortable. Over dinner, they started with small talk. The warm weather, the summit's latest 4-star review. I waited, wondering when they would finally say what was really on their minds. I could tell they were leading up to something. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "Emma, we just wanted to say, we're proud of what you've accomplished." Mom quickly added, "We know we haven't always shown it, but we do see how much work you've put in. The summit it's remarkable." I wanted to feel happy hearing those words, but instead, they felt empty, too little, too late. So I just nodded and waited for what I knew was coming next. Sure enough, Mom sighed and said, "Patrick is struggling. The hotel isn't doing well, and he's in over his head. We were hoping you could maybe help him, help us get things back on track." For a moment, I said nothing. I let their words sit in the air while I really looked at them. Mom, gripping her wine glass a little too tightly, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the stem. Dad, staring at the tablecloth as if it held all the answers. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm but firm. "I offered to help a year ago," I said. "I gave up my life in New York to save Travelers Rest Lodge. You chose to put Patrick in charge, even though you knew he wasn't ready. Even though I had the experience to make it succeed. You didn't want my leadership then. And now that everything has fallen apart, you're asking me to fix it?" I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that." Mom opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand to stop her. "I'll give you advice if you want it. I can suggest strategies, suppliers, even training programs for the staff. But I'm not coming back to clean up Patrick's mess. That's not my responsibility anymore." They didn't know what to say. Dad finally muttered something about understanding my position, but the disappointment on his face was clear. Mom looked like she wanted to push back, but for once, she didn't. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. Setting those boundaries wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wasn't bending over backward to make my parents happy. I wasn't fixing Patrick's mistakes. I was choosing myself, my happiness, my future. Over the next few weeks, I noticed something change in me. Saying no to my parents gave me the confidence to set boundaries in other parts of my life too. I stopped over-explaining my decisions to anyone. Whether it was about work or my personal life, I no longer felt the need to justify myself. And that felt really good. I became more comfortable letting go of relationships that no longer made me happy. Instead, I focused on the people who truly supported me. At the summit, we kept reaching new milestones. Our occupancy rates were the highest in the region, and other boutique hotel owners even started asking for my advice. Meanwhile, my parents' hotel kept struggling. I heard they finally hired a professional consultant to help fix things. Patrick and I barely spoke, and I was fine with that. He never apologized or admitted what had happened, but I no longer needed him to. His bitterness was his burden to carry, not mine. The summit had become a reflection of everything I had worked for, my strength, my vision, my independence. And as the hotel thrived, so did I. One morning, I stood in the lobby, watching the sunlight pour through the tall windows, filling the space with a warm glow. A family walked by, laughing as they planned their day. At the front desk, one of my staff members handed a couple their itinerary for a scenic snowshoe hike. In that moment, it hit me just how far I had come, not just in my career, but as a person. For years, I had measured my worth by my parents' approval, by whether they saw and valued my work. But now I realized I didn't need that anymore. What I had built wasn't just a hotel. It was proof of my resilience, my creativity, and my ability to succeed despite the challenges thrown my way. The journey hadn't been easy. Letting go of the hope that my family would change was painful, but it also freed me. I no longer felt tied to their expectations or their judgment. Instead, I felt proud. Proud of what I had built, proud of the team I had created, and proud of the life I was living. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. The Regional Hospitality Awards was the kind of event I used to dream about attending. The room buzzed with excitement, filled with industry leaders, journalists, and hotel owners from across the state. As the announcer read the nominees for Boutique Hotel of the Year, I spotted my mom and dad sitting toward the back of the room. Their faces were hard to read, but I could feel how much this moment meant to all of us. Then, the announcer spoke the words I would never forget, and the winner is the summit. The room erupted in applause. My team cheered as I walked up to the stage, my heart pounding. As I accepted the award, I glanced at my parents. Dad gave me a small nod, and Mom's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was something acknowledgement. I had stopped expecting that a long time ago, but in its own way, I still appreciated it. After the ceremony, I celebrated with my team. My parents didn't come over, and I didn't go to them. This was my moment, and I wanted to share it with the people who had helped me get here. For the first time, I felt completely free. Free from the need for their approval. Free from the weight of their choices. Success wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I was capable, that I deserved this, that I was enough. And as I raised my glass with my team that night, I knew I had finally found peace. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my focus. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and stepped outside the small clinic. The midday sun cast long shadows over the quiet village. I looked at the screen. My stomach dropped.
Timothy.
I almost didn't answer. After years of dealing with my stepfather, I knew his calls rarely brought good news. But curiosity and maybe a small bit of hope made me pick up. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Dorothy." His voice was too cheerful, which immediately put me on edge. "Just thought you'd want to know. I sold the mountain cabin." I froze, gripping my phone tighter. "You did what?" "Sold it," he repeated like it was no big deal. "Don't look so surprised. It was for the greater good. Mine, of course." He let out a smug laugh, making my blood boil. "My name is Dorothy, and Timothy has been a problem in my life for as long as I can remember. My mom married him when I was 16, and he charmed his way into the family. But beneath the fake smiles, he always put himself first. The cabin wasn't just a house, it was my safe place. I had spent years fixing it up, making it my own. It was where I went to rest after tough work trips, where I hosted friends, where I felt most at peace. And now he had sold it like it meant nothing. "You had no right," I said, my voice shaking. "That cabin wasn't yours to sell." "Relax," he said lazily. "I've been taking care of things while you're off saving the world. You're never there anyway. It was an easy way to pay off my debts. You'll thank me later." "I'll thank you when hell freezes over," I snapped, then hung up before he could say another word. I paced back and forth, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. Timothy always had nerve, but this time, he had gone too far. What he didn't know, and what I planned to keep to myself for now, was that the cabin wasn't his to sell. It wasn't even fully mine. My best friend, Olivia, was co-owner. Years ago, we signed a legal agreement that required both of our signatures for any sale. This wasn't over. I sat on the edge of my cot, staring at my phone like it might catch fire. My mind kept replaying Timothy's smug voice. How could he think this was okay? Selling something so personal to me like it was just another item he could trade for quick cash. The cabin wasn't just a house.
It was a piece of my life.
As a kid, I spent summers there, chasing fireflies and hiking with my mom before she remarried. After she passed away, the cabin became the one stable thing in my life. When everything else felt like it was falling apart, it was my safe place. Timothy, of course, didn't care. To him, the cabin was just another thing to use for his own benefit, like so many things before. But this wasn't some small problem I could brush off. This was my home. I tapped on Olivia's name in my contacts and waited. Hey, Dorothy. What's up? She answered cheerfully. Timothy sold the cabin, I blurted, unable to hide my anger. Silence. Then, he what? Apparently, he needed money to pay off some gambling debts, I said bitterly. He thinks he can do whatever he wants, but our co-ownership agreement makes that impossible. He can't sell it without your permission. Olivia let out a low whistle. He really thought he could get away with this? That man has no shame. None, I agreed. I'm going to need your help fixing this. I'll finish my volunteer work here and head home as soon as I can. Can you pull up the legal documents in the meantime? I want to be ready to fight this when I get back. You got it, Olivia said firmly. We'll handle this together. As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. Timothy thought he had won, that I was too far away to stop him. But he didn't know who he was dealing with. I wasn't a scared teenager who used to let him push me around. I was an adult now with knowledge, support, and the law on my side. If he thought this was over, he was in for a big surprise. The next few days passed quickly as I finished my volunteer work, trying to stay focused. But no matter how busy I was, Timothy's betrayal stayed in my mind like a dark shadow. I couldn't stop picturing him smirking, proud of himself for paying off his debts at my expense. One evening, I sat down with my journal, something I always brought on trips. Writing helped me think clearly, and I needed that more than ever. As I scribbled, memories came rushing back. The first time I visited the cabin with my mom, the long days Olivia and I spent fixing it up, the quiet nights by the fireplace when everything felt peaceful. This wasn't just a house. It was a part of me, and Timothy thought he could sell it like it was nothing?
No.
Not this time. The next day, Olivia called again, sounding all business. I checked the co-ownership agreement, she said. You were right. He can't sell without my permission. The sale isn't legal. Relief flooded through me, but anger followed quickly. Do we know who he sold it to? Not yet, Olivia said. I checked county records, and there's no official transfer. It looks like he tried to do this under the table. Of course. That was just like Timothy, always looking for a shortcut, always trying to cheat the system. What do we do now? I asked. Well, Olivia said, we can confront him directly, or let the legal process take care of it. Either way, he has no legal ground to stand on. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thanks, Olivia. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out, Olivia said warmly. But I'll always have your back. As I hung up, a plan started forming in my mind. I would finish my work here, go home, and face Timothy head-on. But I wasn't going to yell or argue. That's what he expected. No, I had a better way. Timothy always underestimated me. He thought he had won, but by the time I was done, he would know he had made a big mistake. When I finally got home, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Usually the cabin felt peaceful, but now it felt off. My plants were drooping from lack of water. The mail had piled up by the door, and the fridge was nearly empty. I set my bags down and took a deep breath. The weight of what I needed to do settled on my shoulders. Before I could even unpack, my phone buzzed. Timothy. I thought about ignoring it, but then I changed my mind. It was time to deal with him. Well, if it isn't my world-traveling stepdaughter, he said, his voice full of fake cheer. Back to reality, huh? What do you want, Timothy? I asked, not in the mood for games. Just checking in, he said, sounding smug. Making sure you're not too upset about the whole cabin thing. I mean, it's gone now, so no use crying over spilled milk. My jaw tightened. Funny you say that, I replied, keeping my voice calm. Because as far as I can tell, it's not gone. Olivia and I checked the records. The sale didn't go through. You can't sell something that doesn't belong to you. There was a pause. Just long enough to tell me I had hit a nerve. That's ridiculous, Timothy said, his voice no longer as confident. The buyer paid in cash. The paperwork is done. It's a done deal. No, it's not, I said firmly. Olivia and I own the cabin together. She never agreed to sell. That means legally it still belongs to us. He let out a bitter laugh. You think you're so smart, don't you? always acting like the perfect daughter, always trying to control everything. You have no idea how hard I've had it, Dorothy. I did what I had to do. You stole from me, I said. I shot back. And you think I'm supposed to feel sorry for you? You made your choices, Timothy. Now you have to deal with them. He hung up on me. I stood there, phone still in my hand, shaking with a mix of anger and triumph. For years, Timothy had manipulated me, made me feel guilty, and taken advantage of my patience. But not anymore. This wasn't just about the cabin, it was about standing up for myself, setting boundaries, and protecting my peace. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open, going through the documents Olivia had sent. The co-ownership agreement was clear. Neither of us could sell the cabin without the other's written permission. What Timothy had done wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. A sudden knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. When I opened it, there he was. Timothy, wearing his usual smug expression. Mind if I come in? He asked. But he didn't wait for an answer before stepping inside. I crossed my arms, watching as he made himself comfortable in one of my chairs. What do you want, Timothy? He sighed, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. Look, Dorothy, I know you're upset, but try to understand. I was desperate. The people I owed money to weren't exactly patient. I raised an eyebrow. And you thought stealing from me was the answer? Borrowing. He corrected, like that made it better. I was going to make the money back. Once my luck turned around, I would have paid you back every penny. I let out a bitter laugh. Your luck? That's what you're counting on. Timothy, you've been gambling away money for as long as I've known you. It's never worked out. Why would this time be any different? He shifted uncomfortably, but quickly put his confident mask back on. You're overreacting, he scoffed. It's just a cabin. You're barely ever there. Why not let someone else make use of it? Because it's mine, I snapped. Because it's my home. You don't get to decide what I value or what I do with my property. And for the record, Olivia cares about it just as much as I do. Your little sale is invalid, and you know it. His face darkened. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, fear. You wouldn't really go to the authorities, would you? He asked quietly. You wouldn't ruin your own stepfather like that. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. Try me. For the first time, Timothy had no comeback. He stood up, muttered something under his breath, and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sank into my chair, my heart pounding. The argument had shaken me, but at the same time, I felt a small spark of satisfaction. Timothy was finally realizing that his usual tricks wouldn't work on me anymore. This wasn't just about the cabin, it was about standing up to someone who had taken advantage of me for far too long. After Timothy's dramatic exit, I called Olivia to fill her in. He showed up at my house, I said, pacing the living room. Try to spin some sob story about how he borrowed the cabin to pay off his debts. Olivia snorted. Borrowed? Does he even hear himself? What did you say? I told him the sale was invalid. And if he pushed me, I'd go to the authorities. I let out a breath. It rattled him a little, but knowing Timothy, he's probably already planning his next move. Let him, Olivia said firmly. We've got the law on our side. I've already contacted a lawyer to draft a formal cease and desist letter. If he tries to involve the buyer again, we'll have a legal record ready to stop him. I nodded, her words steadying me. Thanks, Olivia. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out, she said. But we're in this together. Over the next few days, I focused on gathering everything I could. I pulled up the co-ownership agreement, saved screenshots of Timothy's messages about the sale, and even tracked down the real estate agent involved in the deal. When I called her, her voice was tense. Look, I didn't know the full situation, she said quickly. Timothy told me he had permission to sell. If I had known there was a co-owner, I never would have touched the deal. Well, now you do, I said, keeping my tone calm. I'm not trying to drag you into this, but I need your help. Can you confirm that Timothy signed the paperwork alone? Yes, she admitted. The buyer hasn't paid in full yet because I flagged the transaction as suspicious. I can send you the documents if you need them. That would be helpful, I said, jotting down her details. As I hung up, I felt a new sense of determination. Timothy had counted on me being too quiet, too distant to fight back. He was about to learn how wrong he was. That evening, Olivia called again with more good news. "The letter is ready," she said. "We'll send it first thing tomorrow. And if Timothy tries anything else, we'll take it further." "Perfect," I replied, a small smile creeping onto my face. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was winning. I was taking control. Timothy thought he could walk all over me, but he was about to learn that I wasn't so easy to defeat. The next morning, Olivia and I finalized the cease and desist letter and sent it to Timothy. The message was clear. If he tried to claim ownership of the cabin or involve the buyer again, we would take legal action. I could only imagine his reaction. Probably a mix of shock and anger. He was used to getting his way by manipulating and intimidating people. But this time, he had no way out. Later that day, the real estate agent emailed me the documents she had promised. Seeing Timothy's signature on the fake sale agreement made my stomach turn. He hadn't just crossed a line, he had completely ignored it. But instead of making me feel helpless, it only strengthened my determination. That evening, I got a call from Paul Heyman, a local officer Olivia had reached out to. "Miss Daniel," he said, his voice calm and professional. "I've reviewed the documents you and Miss Langley provided. It's clear that the sale was unauthorized. Based on this evidence, we can move forward with a formal investigation if you'd like." "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I want to pursue this." "We'll start by contacting the buyer and explaining the situation," he continued. "If Timothy keeps interfering, we'll escalate to criminal charges for fraud." "Thank you, Paul," I said. "Let me know if you need anything else from me." As I hung up, I felt a mix of relief and anticipation. The wheels were in motion and there was no turning back. The next day, Timothy called. His voice was full of anger, but I could hear something else underneath, desperation. "Do you have any idea what you've done, Dorothy?" he snapped. "You're ruining everything." "No, Timothy," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm protecting what's mine. You did this to yourself." "You've always been so ungrateful," he sneered. "I stepped in when your mom couldn't handle things, and this is how you repay me?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You didn't step in, Timothy. You took over. You lied, manipulated, and used people to get what you wanted. And now, you're finally facing the consequences." He started to argue, but I cut him off. "This conversation is over. If you have anything else to say, take it up with my lawyer." And then I hung up. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, my heart racing. Timothy's days of pushing me around were over. I was in control now. 3 days later, Paul Heyman called with an update. "Miss Eric, we've spoken with the buyer. They've agreed to stop the transaction. They didn't know about the co-ownership agreement and are willing to cooperate with the investigation." Relief flooded through me. "That's great news. So the sale is officially canceled." "Yes," he confirmed. "The cabin is still yours and Miss Langley's. However, we need to keep the case open to address your stepfather's fraud. Do you want to press charges?" I hesitated for only a moment. "Yes," I said firmly. "He needs to be held accountable." "Understood," Paul Heyman said. "We'll move forward. Thank you for your cooperation." After the call, I let out a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, I felt truly calm. The cabin was safe, and Timothy's lies were falling apart. That afternoon, I called Olivia. "The sale is officially void," I told her. "The buyer backed out. The cabin is ours again." "That's amazing," she said, excitement clear in her voice. "But what about Timothy?" "The police are moving forward with their investigation," I explained. "He's not getting away with this." "Good," she said. "It's about time someone stood up to him." Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. For years, I had let Timothy get away with too much, his manipulation, his entitlement, his complete lack of respect for boundaries. But this time, I fought back. And it felt like a turning point. Not just for this situation, but for how I handled everything in my life. That evening, I went to the cabin for the first time since coming home. As I stepped inside, a wave of emotions hit me. The smell of the wood panels, the familiar creak of the floorboards, It all reminded me why this place was so special. I sat by the fireplace, letting the quiet of the mountains wash over me. This was my safe place. The place where I built memories, celebrated milestones, and found peace in the middle of life's chaos. And it was still mine. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. I wasn't just reclaiming a property. I was reclaiming myself. A week later, Paul Heyman called with a final update. Miss Eric, I wanted to let you know that your stepfather has been officially charged with fraud and attempted theft of property. He'll have to appear in court, and based on the evidence, the case against him is strong. Hearing those words brought a mix of emotions, relief, vindication, and even a small trace of sadness. Thank you for everything, Paul, I said. Thank you, I said sincerely. You handled this with a lot of strength, Paul Heyman replied. It's not easy to stand up to family, but you did the right thing. After the call, I sat in silence, letting everything sink in. For years, Timothy had been a constant presence in my life, a toxic one. But now, I was finally free from his control. The next day, Olivia and I met at the cabin. She brought a bottle of wine to celebrate, and we sat on the porch, looking out at the mountains. The crisp air smelled of pine and earth. To standing up for ourselves, she said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers, smiling. To us. As we talked, I realized how much this whole experience had taught me. I had spent so much of my life avoiding conflict, trying to keep the peace, especially with Timothy. But this time, I had fought back. And it felt like a turning point. Not just in my relationship with him, but in the way I saw myself. You know, Olivia said, pulling me from my thoughts, this cabin has always been more than just a place to stay. It's a symbol of everything we've built, everything we've worked for. Don't ever let anyone take that from you again. Her words hit deep. The cabin wasn't just a house. It was a reflection of my independence, my strength, and my determination to protect what mattered most to me. That night, I sat by the fireplace, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. Timothy's betrayal had tested me, but it had also proven how strong I could be. The cabin was safe, my boundaries were set, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly in control of my life. In the weeks that followed, things slowly returned to normal. The cabin, once caught in the middle of Timothy's greed, became my refuge again. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the trees outside, reminded me of what I had fought to protect. I didn't hear much from Timothy after the charges were filed. But one day, my mom called. Her voice was hesitant. You know how he gets, Dorothy, she said, her usual way of defending him. But this time, it felt weaker. I do, I replied calmly. That's why I did what I had to do. She didn't argue. For the first time, there was no guilt trip, no desperate attempt to make me fix things. Just a quiet sigh before she said, I hope you find peace. I already have, I said, and I meant it. Over the next few weekends, Olivia and I worked on small projects around the cabin. We painted the porch, patched up the roof, and planted wildflowers along the edge of the property. With every brushstroke and every nail hammered, I wasn't just fixing the cabin, I was reclaiming a part of myself. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Olivia turned to me. So, what's next for you, Dorothy? You took back the cabin, stood up to Timothy. What's your next big move? I thought for a moment. The answer came easily. I'm going to keep doing what I love, I said. Volunteering, traveling, living life on my own terms. But this time, I won't let anyone else decide how I should live it. She smiled and raised her glass. To that. As the days passed, I reflected on everything I had learned. This wasn't just about the cabin, or even about Timothy. It was about recognizing my own strength. For years, I had let his actions decide how much I pushed back, how much I tolerated. But now I knew I was capable of setting boundaries and keeping them, no matter how uncomfortable it made others. The cabin was more than just a place, it was proof of how much I had grown. A reminder that I didn't have to sacrifice my peace or my values to make someone else comfortable. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, I stood on the porch, breathing in the cool, pine-scented air. For the first time in years, I felt at home, not just in the cabin, but in my own life.